Hey guys, this is Luke here. Thanks for downloading the Thunk Tank podcast. Usually we do a group intro of some kind, but we're pretty busy these days, so this one's going to be solo. This episode is about oceans. I don't really know what the fuck that means, but basically we go into everything interesting about oceans. From tardigrades and Free Willy having free will. We actually talked a lot about space. There's a lot of oceans in space on different planets and different moons and stuff like that. So, and also I kind of consider space like the up ocean, and then the regular oceans like the down ocean. And they both have crazy alien kind of creatures. Well, I don't know if space has aliens, but it could, I guess, right? So we go into a lot of shit about space, but also about our oceans and the crazy, creatures that live down there. There's also a American Museum of Natural History exhibit going on all about the oceans right now called Unseen Oceans. So if you live close to New York City, it's probably worth checking out. I might do it. Let's see. Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's basically a way to support creative work, including podcasts. So the way we're trying to entice people to support us on Patreon is with drunk tanks. After we finish a Thunk Tank podcast episode, once in a while we're feeling extra thunky, and we keep recording and admittedly get a little bit too drunk, but it usually gets funny, and we post those for our Patreon subscribers. So if you want to hear less thunky and more drunky, I would go over to Patreon and consider supporting. I think the minimum is $1 per episode, which, think about it like a nice cup of coffee per month, something like that. And it also, just to support us, we love doing this. We want to continue to do it. It's not free. It costs some money. This is our first episode where we have slightly better audio because a generous listener gave us a soundboard. Thank you, listener, for that. Hopefully we'll keep upgrading equipment and getting better quality. But yeah, so this is the Thunk Tank podcast. I'm Luke. I'm a musician. We have Joe, who's a writer, and Johnny the Genie, who is a brewer. We have absolutely no qualifications from which to talk about the oceans, but fuck it, we did it anyways. So, hope you enjoy. Peace.
Attention humans, this is a Thunk Tank. Please insert this podcast directly into your nearest orifice for viewing pleasure.
Okay, you ready? Oh shit.
Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Welcome to the Thunk Tank.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Welcome, come into our Thunk Tank.
Luke, don't switch to the other peanuts.
Welcome to the Thunk Tank. Come in the tank. We're thinking, and we're drinking,
and we're thunked.
Oh my god, I'm probably more beer than man if we go far enough back at this point.
The music cues out, and we're going.
And we're live.
Those three notes that every classical song ends on, where it goes like dun, dun,
Three blind mice?
dun.
Oh, it's a...
Three blind mice.
Well, really, like, music can be reduced to, like, da,
No, that's
da,
what I mean.
da.
But it always ends on those three notes. Every classical song ever.
Anyways, this is our episode on oceans.
Oh god, I already totally fucked it up. Oh,
No,
I
not really.
already started cursing too. So all our PG listeners are gone.
So you probably just heard us do some kind of intro. Maybe we just got back from an afternoon beer to do that.
There's a Sasquatch in his
Yeah,
window.
Johnny, there's someone behind you in the backyard.
There's a Sam Squanch.
It might be your wife, but it also might be, I don't know.
Johnny, for those of you who don't know, is joining us live via Skype video. And there's a Sasquatch outside his window.
Yeah, welcome. I realized listening back to the last episode, we should just, like, introduce ourselves, too.
Oh, my name is, fuck. You go first.
I'm Luke, I think.
All right, I'm Joe.
Oh, we're doing double intros now? Okay, I'm Johnny.
that's true. Fuck. No, we don't introduce.
No. Let's stay super formal with it.
Yeah, I think the important thing is
We're going to first start with what beer we're drinking here.
We forgot that formula, I think, the last couple episodes.
By the way, folks, hopefully our audio sounds better today because we have a soundboard donated to us.
Yeah, we have a real-life soundboard, which we will link in the description.
That's not how that works. A listener generously gave us a soundboard.
He was such a huge fan. He loves this podcast.
A mixer, so much.
He was like, hey, I want this to be even better.
So we can play fucking YouTube videos that you'll hear.
Funny fart sounds.
We got better sound, hopefully. As long as I did the math right. Like, I kind of tried to figure it out today, but it's possible that this won't even work.
Like we record it, and then people are like, why do they keep referring to these YouTube videos that nobody can hear?
Something like that. Yeah, that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah. Well, Johnny's holding a sword, so that's something, too.
I'm so ready for this week.
Johnny, the beer we're drinking right now is... I went to a release at Other Half in Brooklyn this past weekend, and they did a collab with Monkish Brewing. Did you hear about that?
I'm familiar with the brewery, but I don't really follow Other Half's releases since I can't go to them.
Fair enough.
Not with that attitude, but yeah, go on.
So this beer is called LGA to LGB. It's a 10%. Am I right about that, Joe?
10%.
10%
on the dot, yeah. I think it's 10 point...
It's a lot. Like, I would never have it by myself, I think.
Yeah, 10.0%.
I mean, I did the other night, but...
How'd that go?
I mean, it just, like,
I did
worked.
I did the same thing, and I was vibing. I was like,
yeah.
I feel drunk.
That's the thing about craft beer is, like, the high percentage can hit you all at once.
Yeah. But it was a good...
The bubbles help.
It was a nice, smooth
and the
vibe,
bubbles.
though.
So
like,
we've got some other beers. We'll hopefully remember to announce them as we drink them.
I'm about to crack this next one, actually.
Yeah, actually, like as we were setting up, I kind of finished my beer.
Yeah, we kind of powered through.
What do you have a growler of, Johnny?
Yeah, what do you got going on there?
I got a growler of Fonta Flora's Charleston Gold, and it's a farmhouse saison with Charleston golden rice, so it's really light. But saisons have that nice kind of peppery, like funky farmhouse flavor.
Yeah.
Which literally, like, think about what a barn kind of smells like, but like a lot light, like straw, hay,
manure,
a little bit of horsiness.
That
to
grassiness, right?
Yeah, that grassy horse blanket, like.
Yeah,
it's like a warm grassiness, though.
I really dig that. It's like the same grassiness you might get from certain types of tea.
Right,
and the rice really thins
it's an aroma
it out,
more than anything.
So it's very light. Think like Budweiser is a rice beer, pretty much.
Gotcha.
But they use like a white rice with like extract. This is made with real local rice, and it gives a nice, interesting flavor.
That's actually a really good podcast beer. Because sometimes
it's 5.2%. So I wanted to start off.
Well, you're going to have an edge on us by the end, I guess.
Yeah, but now we just
have a growler.
Look up in the sky, Interboro. Double Indian Pale Ale.
Yeah, so Interboro is also in Brooklyn. I went there right after the Other Half, and I would say generally I was less impressed with the vibe there. They almost gave a very like that like Portlandia type vibe where like it's almost fashionable for the workers there to treat you like you're a piece of shit.
Yeah,
I got that vibe there, like hardcore.
Yeah, that's Brooklyn, baby.
It could just be a general Brooklyn thing, but it's common in like the craft coffee and craft world in general that it kind of counters that. It's sort of like a very kind, like, hey, are you having a good day? How's it going? Blah, blah, blah.
A lot of places, I mean, I guess Brooklyn's different because you have so much traffic where you can get away with that. But if you're not in a high volume place necessarily, or you're not well known, that's tougher to get away with because people will not come back.
I think something about, like, some people like to be treated like that, And
in a place like New York City, there's enough of them where you're good to go. Like,
I don't know, it's a little bit of a dominatrix type thing, domination in general.
Plenty of that vibe.
It's like, treat me like shit, even though I'm the customer.
Feed me that.
But you know what? I miss that, living away from...
You live where it's nice.
Now. People are nice and they talk to you, and it's like, I miss going into just like a greasy Greek diner in the middle, like 3 a.m. hammered, and they see you come in, they're like, motherfuckers, like they want nothing to do with you, and they drop the check like way before you're ready to leave, and they're just like, yeah, okay, are you getting more food? No, okay, and they just stop refilling your coffee after. Like, I kind of like that being treated.
They send
like
you
shit.
the signals of like, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I miss it sometimes. When people are nice, it makes it hard when you're in a bad mood to. Because when you're in a bad mood up there, you just take it out on anybody you want.
How do you?
I mean,
take
look,
it out?
at the end of the day, it's not actually a good thing. There's something honest about it on one level, like the New Yorker stereotype, but there's something dishonest about it on another level too. It's like you're not actually being honest. You're being one layer of honest, which is like, I'm angry, so I'm gonna like treat the world like shit. But really, you could just like figure your own shit out and stop being an asshole.
But that's what I mean. I feel like that's not necessarily a New York thing, because like I was in Tampa over the summer, and I think it's a thing that you'll find in cities. Like when I was in Tampa, every service, or not every, but a lot of service people I met were just totally checked out, like mean, negative, nasty, like even more so than I run into here in New York.
So it's a city thing generally, maybe.
I mean, I think it might just be amplified because New York City's so big.
That actually transitions into
That makes sense.
The topic today, because the topic
Good
today
luck
is
with that.
oceans in general, right?
Yeah.
And
and bigger makes a difference.
Well, I was thinking like this whole city vibe, like there's something usually about someone who spends a lot of time in nature, let's say lives in a cabin in the woods or something. You get this feeling like they have this connection with nature that they've kept, and then through that connection they find a sense of peacefulness, right?
Yeah.
But I thought last night, as I was watching Blue Planet, the Deep Sea episode of Blue Planet, I thought to myself, well, that's one aspect of nature, is like seeing the bald eagles like fly across mountains. But you go like the opposite of mountains and you go to like the mountains under the water.
Yeah.
There's some nasty shit going on down there.
People forget that the highest mountains are underwater.
They're in like World War Million down there.
And it's all in darkness.
It's all in complete darkness, and it's all just like, species at these evolutionary arms races, just like constantly trying to outcompete each other.
Do you know what's crazy about that? Is that to them, we're in outer space.
I mean,
yeah, we're the aliens.
That's
I don't know.
fucked up.
I haven't even like had time. I was practicing
that
today,
one,
and I was
kids.
trying to like run how to digest this whole ocean thing, and I haven't figured out how to. What do you got, Joe? Give me the best. Like, what the fuck's going on with the ocean, and how do you integrate that into like, like it's like we've okay. Like I'm freaking out. I don't know how to like.
Deep breath, Luke. Deep breath.
So you think about the oceans, right? And you think about the fact that, I mean, that is where it all sort of got its legs. Pun kind of intended.
That's where
right?
life started, in the oceans.
And for like most of life has been in the oceans, right? Like
we're the sequel, right?
Yeah,
we're the spin-off series.
We're like the most recent iteration of life, and even then, with
although it did
the diversity
crawl
of land
out
life,
of the water like pretty early on, right?
sure, but
Yeah,
it's
if you
been
believe
it's
that.
still been in the water, just stewing
Yeah.
for billions of years, or at least a billion years now. And like if you go back to microbial life, like billions of years, right?
Yeah, and those are still chilling,
Well,
just
the-
because other things
Well,
changed.
what's
yeah.
crazy about that too is that they'll be the last ones too to survive, these microbes.
Right, like extremophiles, for example,
yeah.
are these organisms that they're called extremophiles because they can live under very extreme conditions.
Right. It's like a
Like, for example, they live deep, deep in the ocean where these vents are spewing out like hot magma gases from
basically like
the Earth's
a
core.
volcanic vent.
A volcanic vent,
Yeah.
yes. And it's so hot there, the water gets to like 800 degrees Fahrenheit, which you would think,
And it's full of sulfur and methane.
yeah, all these like
not
things
really
that are
habitable.
like terrible for supporting life, yet these things
Yeah.
have figured out how to be alive there. You know?
But it's terrible at supporting life of things that have evolved away from it. Right? Like we have come
yeah, so
to,
where it's a self-centered view of life in that
exactly
sense. Yeah.
because those things were chilling, way earlier. And in fact, I saw some YouTube video. I forget what it is.
Okay.
We can't cue it.
We're not good enough where I can just cue
Yeah.
the video that you don't tell me the name of.
But it was about how
You don't have all these ready?
it was about this. It was based on this short story. I forget the name, but I'll link it in the description. And the short story is basically like a black hole comes into the solar system, and like fucks up the orbits of the planet, and Earth gets like ejected, so Earth doesn't have a sun, and everything freezes. And it was sort of talking
yes.
about like that, like what if Earth lost its sun? And the point that the guy made was that the Earth could travel for a while and still be heated at its core because it's so hot, and the only things to survive might be these extremophiles still at these vents, And but they wouldn't know. Not that they would know either way.
They would
but
just keep doing what they do.
nothing would change them.
Yeah.
Like their functionability, like they're one of the few life forms that don't need photosynthesis, that don't need the sun, which that's a game
Although
changer.
at some point that heat that's coming out of volcanic vents, that's leftover heat from the formation of the Earth itself.
Yeah.
That heat will dissipate eventually, and
Yes.
then they would die when the whole thing becomes just a frozen ice ball.
But probably long after we're gone.
Well, yeah, I mean, so one of the things that this got me thinking when I was researching oceans, this sounds funny. By the way, I feel like we should give a disclaimer, like, we're just three dudes who, like, our research usually consists of a beer and
setting us up, man.
YouTube/Netflix.
I would first of all, I'm an academic researcher. You are.
Yeah, I Bing things.
Yeah,
Oh,
John,
shit, you use Bing?
Johnny uses Bing and
Sometimes.
Google.
Yeah, I get all the perspectives.
Do you ever
know.
ask Jeeves?
I've dabbled with Jeeves back in my time.
Yeah, I like to ask a digital butler to just Google something for me. Yeah.
Yeah, so
right.
I think you're selling us short, man. I mean,
What I mean is...
at least some of us have been to college.
Yeah, what I mean is, like,
Ooh.
don't hold us accountable if we get something wrong, but we usually don't.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah. You lost us there.
We usually do? Is that what I meant
No,
to say?
I think we come from a place where we've done some research that a lot of other people could do, but you kind of got to think about where to look for that information. And in fact, a lot of the
Right.
types of videos that I watch now on YouTube, like YouTube channels, if you look at even on our podcast channel, a lot of the ones I follow, they're just dudes or, people of whatever variety of, origin, like whether they're academic people.
Folks.
That's what I mean, whether
Yeah.
they're academics or they're just, guys who, like people who have regular jobs who started doing research and they're like, oh yeah, I want to do this weird channel on whatever, and then it turns into something else. But a lot of them just start by finding interesting stuff, and anybody can do it, but it's hard to do. It takes work.
Yeah, I think what
So-
we might have as, like, a general skill set is, I think we all are good at finding information. And I was thinking...
Nom.
we sort of were the type of people to do this anyways. Like, if you're at home one night and you watch a documentary about the ocean, that might trigger you into, like, a 2-hour random session of, like, interneting about the ocean.
Isn't that the funnest, though, when you're just kind of, like, hanging out and then you accidentally click on a weird Wikipedia article
And
about...
down the rabbit hole you go.
three-eyed fish heads, and then all of a sudden you're just link,
But I
and you're
guess
in
my-
deep.
I think part of that is how because we like grew up just at the tail end of the analog era,
And
so when you
encyclopedia,
did have an
print
interesting
encyclopedia.
when you did have an interesting question, you couldn't Google it. You had to like ask a grown up or find it in a book. So
Terrifying to think about asking a
think
grown-up.
Yeah.
I know. I think we appreciate better. Like a lot of younger people, I feel like if they see something cool, they're like, all right, cool. And then just move on because they can always go back. Like it's the access has been there the whole time,
Right.
Whereas I like to look stuff up because it still amazes me that I'm able to.
But it kind of, don't you feel like it kind of
But I'm
devalues
a
it too?
rube. What?
Like so this is one of the things I do with my classes where a lot of professors, they just edit with their students on Google Docs. They'll say, bring your laptop or whatever, and we'll edit on Google Docs. But I actually still make my students go and print out their papers.
Yeah, you were saying that last episode, I think, right?
No, I said it at some point though.
Oh.
But I make them print it out because it becomes something real. It's not just in the cloud as another piece of like, oh yeah, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, that gets back to the reading a book. Like, I still prefer reading a book to reading a book on, let's say, my iPad or something.
Which I can do. Like, I've read books on my computer before, like via
You almost
Kindle.
sounded like Andy from Parks and Rec. Like, I've read books.
I've heard of them. Well,
I know things.
Yeah, I know.
I have
things.
ideas.
Yeah. I fell in the pit.
Well, I wanted to ask you guys.
Yeah, what's
before
up?
we get too far away from the whole microbial discussion.
Yeah.
Did you see they discovered a new type of tardigrade in a Japanese parking lot?
Dude, I am all about tardigrades.
In a Japanese parking lot?
Yeah.
What were they doing in the
So-
Japanese parking lot?
Looking for tardigrades, man. They know where to look.
Wait,
They're-
who's
they're
they, Johnny? You got to give me more.
Yeah,
than
who was
this.
looking for tardigrades in the Japanese parking lot?
Japanese scientists. That should be good enough for you.
That's
All right,
a safe
what,
answer.
what did they conclude about?
Are you really gonna know like the program at the institute they work at in Japan? If I go and look at
No,
it
no,
right
no.
now?
Please don't waste the time to do that.
Can you give me one cool
I'm
Japanese
not.
name?
Wait, I mean, I could pretend when you look it up, I could be like, oh, the
Actually,
the,
it was a research team from the university in Poland.
Oh, that's not
So,
as
bam.
exciting.
All right, there you go.
So
They
for anybody
made-
who doesn't
anyways.
know, a tardigrade is also known as
Water
a
bear.
water bear.
Yeah, right.
Just Google tardigrade, the image search, and you'll find it's a small little thing, but it has like these like tiny little legs and little eye things and head thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're these little things, but they're also extremophiles because they can survive total dehydration, which most living things can't. They can just like freeze dry themselves.
Right.
Extreme temperatures and pressures, which, you know, if you go to the bottom of the ocean, you're going to get crushed to death. Intense radiation, like solar radiation, and the vacuum of space. They've actually put them in the vacuum of space and then rehydrated them, and they come back to life.
And for a while, too.
So to take the crazy conspiracy theory approach to it, because I always like to think about that idea.
That's why we hired you, man.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that tardigrades are an example of alien life. They might not be from Earth. That might be how life got to Earth, is like spores that could survive the vacuum of space. You know, they
panspermia.
get embedded in the crannies of a meteor or rocket. They survive. They can handle extreme heat. So re-entry through an atmosphere, they're fine. And you know, they hit a moist, damp planet with nothing to compete with, and that's one of the interesting theories. But tardigrades are just really cool. You should check them out.
But even in addition to
they
that,
discovered a new species.
But like the tardigrade, like if you need a stronger, you know, probably hint that there may in fact be life elsewhere in the universe. I mean, come on, these guys, they can survive anywhere.
So one of the things about so Johnny was just mentioning that these little guys are so hardy that they can survive so many conditions, including space. So like this panspermia theory is a theory that because Mars was more habitable earlier in the solar system.
Says who?
Just like the geological history, like it was in the Goldilocks zone and it had an atmosphere.
I don't buy it, but go on.
Oh, Joe's playing character.
No, I don't buy it.
See, here's the thing, Joe. If I had an astrophysicist on, I could let him play tennis with you. But if you're going to try to play tennis with me, there's going to be a point where you're like, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't fucking know, okay? I don't know astrophysics.
So you're taking it on faith, is all I'm saying.
Well, I would say when you push it hard enough, everything is on faith to a degree.
I think that's fair.
Because like I said this in last episode, I think, but even to be a scientist, you do have to make one axiom on the leap of faith, which is that the universe makes sense. Maybe the universe doesn't make sense and there aren't any patterns. You know, that's a possibility.
Somebody just sent me a great Vonnegut quote about that. I got to check that for you.
Vonnegut? Mm. So anyways, there's a chance that life first started on Mars in the form of these microbial things.
Yeah.
And then through these, early in the solar system, there was so many different, like asteroid and comet impacts.
Stuff knocking about.
And that. And so and we already know that like Martian rock exists on Earth.
Right.
Like we find them.
Do you know they're sending one back with the next rover?
To do what?
Chill?
Really?
Yeah.
That's surprising because usually they're very careful when they're exploring other planets they have to
They might sanitize it.
Yeah, sanitize the rock. Yeah, they want to make sure that we don't accidentally inject our own microbial life and then be like, we found life on Mars. It's like no, we brought that with us because it survived the journey in space.
Yeah, it's gonna get fucked up when Elon
famously
shows up there in an
happened
Iron Man
with
suit. What, Johnny?
With a Mars. That's famously happened with something they sent to the moon, and they brought it back, and there's bacteria, and they thought that it was moon bacteria. They freaked out until they realized it was just something from the JPL clean room.
Right.
It was a fuck up in the.
It was just a loogie.
It was just a loogie on the lens or something.
So,
but
somebody spit on the lens to wipe it clean.
But I was also reading that Elon Musk's car is probably the largest bacterial load floating in space. Everything that gets sent up by.
Did he sanitize it?
Yeah. Did he?
No.
They didn't. Oh no. He even said he's like, yeah, we didn't space proof it. We just put it in.
Yeah,
fair enough.
They figured they were pretty sure it was going to explode. So,
yeah, I mean, when I saw the video of him watching it launch after it.
Yeah, he puts his hands on his head like, holy shit.
I was like, oh, wow,
So
we really weren't
perfect
sure if that was going to work.
is if there's a couple of tardigrades somewhere in the upholstery, clinging onto the upholstery, they're probably frozen and chilling, waiting to crash into a planet where they can rehydrate and get to work.
So these extremophiles, that's a really fascinating part of the ocean, and it also connects ocean with oceans on other planets and moons.
Well, that could even be exosolar too, because they found I don't know how to say it, but that asteroid that came into the solar system, I think last year, and it didn't come too close to Earth, but it came pretty close to Earth. Like it passed fairly near to Earth. So that's a situation where, if you had extremophiles or something on it from another solar system, why not? If it splashes in an Earth ocean, primordial
which was
Earth
happening
ocean, why
frequently.
not?
In fact, all of Earth's oceans came from asteroidal impacts.
How do you know that?
Because it was so hot when the planet formed that
answer.
a lot of the moisture would have been driven off. So it had to have been hit with comets and stuff as it was cooling.
Right.
It probably helped cool it down. And as the ice melted, it
it
built an atmosphere.
Frozen. It was ice frozen to asteroids far enough out in the solar system. In the beginning of the solar system, the sun was just formed, and the solar wind was so intense that it pushed out any and all gas that existed, and what left behind was mostly rock. Right?
Oh, so the gas giants got pushed out?
Well, what I mean is the water vapor, for example, got pushed out. But far enough out, the heat was not so much that ice would become water vapor, so it was still ice.
Yeah.
And the solid ice, in this mad dance of an orbit around the sun, eventually made its way, because there was so much of it, to impact Earth again and again and again. And that's what gave
and there would have been more of
most
them
of the
back
water
then.
On Earth.
There would have been many more of those types of asteroids, right?
Yeah.
There's also that's a cool sci-fi device for terraforming. Is you crash drones into ice-rich asteroids and comets and then drive them into planets that are a little
that's
too
not
hot.
even sci-fi. That's like shit that people are actually considering in
futurist.
Well,
type,
even now, like more and more, since especially with private space companies, I've been reading a lot about. There's actually companies now that are working on asteroid mining. Like they're ready to do it because a lot of these asteroids, like you're saying, with the early solar system, when you had these protoplanets and these sorts of like large objects too that would crash into each other after they formed, and these specific metals, when you start to form a protoplanet is just like an early planet that hasn't quite settled yet, and
it's not even round necessarily yet.
But it's been around long enough where the heavier elements settle.
Yeah. So
like they coalesce together as gold or platinum or uranium, whatever. But then in the early solar system, iron, sure, they crash and they explode, and then you have these chunks of just like you'll find in the asteroid belt a rock of platinum that's a few kilometers across, which is more than all the platinum available on Earth right now.
Right. And
it's
obviously the reason it's so rare on Earth is why it's so expensive too.
Right, because we might have some, but we
pricing
can't get to it because it's too deep. It's easier to go to the asteroid belt with a drone spaceship, tow it back to your moon base, and mine it there and ship it back to Earth.
Right.
And that's not far off as far off as people think.
So one connection. Oh, sorry, Johnny. Go ahead.
I just had another cool asteroid fact since we're not talking about the ocean.
No. I mean, say your asteroid fact, and then I was about to bring it back to ocean.
We'll cycle back.
Talking about like rare earth elements, iron or used to be one, to be honest. Like iron and steel,
Right.
They didn't really have the technology to refine the ore in ancient times. I'm talking like ancient Mesopotamia and stuff. So everyone's running around with copper and bronze blades, which if you've ever had a piece of hammered bronze, it would dent, So like a weapon that got bit by another weapon wasn't a great weapon, but they would find metal from asteroids and try to get as hot as they could to rework it. And so there are some, like, ancient kings would have, the only iron sword in the kingdom. So even if he wasn't that great of a warrior, if you tried to challenge him, you were fighting with a copper sword, and he'd be out, cool. And you're wearing a wicker shield, and he would just and chop through your shit.
Right. It's like, yo, bitch, this came from a meteor.
Yeah, it's literally like, I got this from, like, the gods clearly sent it to me. It was a smoking crater with this glowing in the middle. And I said, yeah, make me a weapon to smite my enemies with. It's like, yeah, we should follow that guy.
Yeah. That's
That's
pretty cool.
Yeah, and
so
they can
it's-
actually test it now. Like there's ways they can know, like, hey, this rock is not originally of Earth, even though every aspect of Earth
You look
was
for the
originally.
little trademark in the corner, right?
Yeah, there's a trademark sign in the corner. Exactly.
It says ER.
No,
Earth,
I mean,
Earth real.
in general, these things, just like the loose term would be chemical signatures.
That sounds like something you made up, but go ahead. Go on.
I mean, again.
I'm coming at you hard this episode.
No,
I
but
don't know
Joe,
why.
it's a healthy thing. Like Joe generally plays this game with me where he'll just be like devil's advocate to like a hard angle.
But it's true.
But it's
like,
really good because
do you know what a chemical signature is?
So okay, so for me to go farther into that, I could.
Yeah.
But it would require me to like put the brain bike in like high gears and
Yeah.
really get the pedals going,
Yeah.
and then it would still kind of suck.
Yeah.
Like-
No, I know what you're saying because.
But I do know more than I'm
questions,
saying,
There
yeah.
are questions like that you would ask to people who have crazy ideas, but their feeling would be the same as what you're feeling now, where
Right.
they like what you just described. They're like, oh yeah, I could just look it up and I would know that it's true.
Right.
Except that you're actually probably right. That's the difference. But
Yeah, there's a lot there.
But it's interesting that feeling, that sentiment of, yeah, I know I'm right, is the same.
Well, yeah. So it's
the
the,
same feeling.
emotion of feeling right is
Yes.
always the same. It's
And that
how
fascinates
grounded
me.
that is, in
Yeah.
fact, and how hard it is for you to, let's say, uncover that.
Yeah.
But
But the question is, why do you
the
value
justified
why do you value
basis.
fact? Like,
fair enough. I
you've,
mean,
you've chosen to do that.
let's
You don't
get
have
back to oceans, though.
Yeah,
That's the
dive back
philosophy
in. Let's
episode.
dive back
So,
in. Yeah,
so
we're
when
diving back in.
you guys were talking about space and all that shit, and I was thinking of this funny thing, which is, we always look up at the sky and we think to ourselves, wow, what a mysterious cosmos. We don't know so much of what's out there. It's so big we can't even comprehend. Yet here on our own planet Earth, I think the number is like 5%, like 5% of the oceans we've actually, looked at and know about.
It's mapped. Yeah, it's crazy small, and the problem is it changes too. Like we don't have a live feed of it like Google Maps.
But what does that mean?
And we
Matt?
can't
Satellites,
telescope
so-
it either.
But what does that mean? 5%. Like,
We've only explored 5% of the ocean.
what does that mean? Explored? Like, saw it with a flashlight?
Been there and studied it.
What? But
And
It's
know
some-
about...
it's
We,
don't they have radar? Like, they know where all the nooks and crannies are? No.
I think he means in a scientific way. Yeah, you can use depth finders, but they just tell you distance to stuff. That's so ships don't run aground.
Don't-
But to actually map it,
let me put it this way, Joe.
the
Scientists
biological-
estimate that only 90%... They estimate that 91% of ocean species have not even been looked at or discovered yet.
So there are giant octopi.
So all the ocean species that we
yeah.
know about account for, like, let's say, roughly 10% of what actually exists.
But is that because we see the most obvious ones, probably like big ones too? Like,
Well, it has to do with how deep the ocean is, too.
yeah.
So, like, the average
How
depth
big it
of
is.
the ocean and how big it is. It's so big.
the planet is mostly blue.
70%,
People forget it's,
yeah.
Well,
it's mostly water. There's a lot of land on it,
Yeah.
but a lot of people are running around on it, but it's still like way more water.
yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe that you would need like 80 million Mount Everests to weigh as much as all of the Earth's oceans combined. And that's a very interesting, specific fact I just said.
Speaking of the ocean weighing things, like the water pressure, like you hear about submarines
Yeah.
and how deep they can go, how deep people can scuba dive, right? Johnny, what would you guess is the average, not the deepest, because that's way, way deeper, but the average depth of the ocean?
Well, the deepest is like 6 or 8 miles, I think.
Yeah, I
And
don't
that's
know
only
the
in a
exact
couple
math,
of
but it's
spots.
36,000 feet is like the deepest in the Mariana Trench.
So what is that, like 8 miles or something?
And I was looking up, the pressure down there is so high that like per square inch, it's about the same as the energy in a barrel of a shotgun.
Jeez.
So so that's why submarines are crazy expensive. A spaceship only needs to survive 1 atmosphere.
Yeah.
Like it goes into space, it doesn't have to worry about
Pressure.
like, the extreme
Well,
pressure on it. You
James
just have to
Cameron
get
was
it
one of
there.
the guys who went the deepest in a submarine.
Yeah.
He went into the Mariana Trench, and I think that one other guy went slightly deeper than him, and some oceanographer. He was probably like, "Fuck it, I'm going 1,000 more feet to set a
Yeah.
record." And But it's so intense there that for most submarines, like the military type of submarines, if they were that deep, their entire metal shell would just crush like tinfoil.
Yeah.
And that's called water
imagine
pressure.
that. Think about a submarine where every available inch, like it's just covered in 1 million shotguns aimed at it, and they're constantly firing on automatic.
Yeah, the key
it has to be able to withstand that amount of pressure to survive down
The
there.
key to that shotgun reference you gave, Johnny, was that it's per a very small surface area. So it's not like, one shotgun shooting at a submarine. It's thousands every small area just constantly shooting.
And like that. Yeah,
it just crushes submarines.
Yeah.
And I was reading the first guys to go down to the Marianas Trench in the 60s. The submarine could only stay down there for 20 minutes, and they went down too quickly, and they disturbed all the sand and dust and stuff. That there's not a lot of water movement there because of the pressure. So they stirred it all up, and it didn't settle by the time they left. So they weren't able to take any pictures or do any research.
What a waste of a hard journey.
Because the pressure's so much, it's just like suspended.
Well, no, it's just they only had 20 minutes to stay down there. Yeah, so it took so long for it to, because I guess it had been undisturbed for so long.
No, but that's what I mean, because the pressure's so intense. It's not like it pushes it down to the bottom. It's just stuck floating then, and like eventually it will get pushed to the bottom because the pressure's higher at like each iteration, each like inch or whatever. But like there's no impetus to really push it down immediately.
Well, it gets caught in currents, like temperatures of water form these.
But those are probably pretty slow moving at that depth. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
but the low points, there's really not a lot of movement because it's just a low point.
That's like I was watching this video about actually the biggest technically, and this is I'm sure up for debate among people who know way more about this than I do, but the biggest ocean in the solar system is actually on Jupiter, and it's when you get down to a certain layer, the pressure becomes so extreme, but the temperature becomes so high that you wind up with what's called metallic hydrogen.
Jesus Christ!
And it's almost like plasma, but it's something different, I guess, because of the pressure. And if you were to fall, I mean, of course you would be crushed and vaporized, but theoretically, if you weren't, you would get to a point where you're just sort of suspended.
You float.
Between the pressure and the gravity, and you would just be suspended forever, kind of like that, where it's like, there's no force to really make it settle at a certain point of pressure, probably.
So, Joe, you brought a good point that blew my, like, you read something and you like make it click and your mind breaks for a minute. Is reading about all the different oceans on different planets. Like, we just happen to be the way Earth is positioned and what kind of elements are on it and its size, that our oceans are water, that it's water in like liquid, gas, and solid state. But you go to other planets and they got oceans and the temperatures and stuff. They got oceans that are liquid methane. And like Joe's saying, whatever, metallic hydrogen.
Or on some of them, their oceans are under the surface. The surface is frozen cold because it's out of the habitable zone of the sun. It's too far away.
Well, there are more under ice oceans in the solar system than there are surface oceans in the solar system.
Definitely, because we're the only one.
But that's what I mean. What does that say about oceans? Is an ocean really, by definition, if you want to look at it that way, an under ice sort of world or realm or whatever? Like, what defines an actual ocean?
I think under is the word, because even here on Earth, most of the ocean is this underworld that...
I think that's the key.
That's such a human, phrase you hear in different kinds of mythology too, the underworld, right? And I was always terrified as a kid when I was at the beach and I would just think to myself, what is under there? Like, and how far does it go? And the best answer I could think of, or that I would get from adults that I would ask, would be forever. It's just like looking up at the night sky. It might as well go on forever.
The key is it might as well go on forever. But that's a healthy evolutionary trait at this point.
Well, so it's so terrifying, and have you guys ever been to the beach at night, especially?
Yes, it is dark.
There's something so dark about the sea that, like, my body, I mean, I love walking at the beach at night, don't get me wrong. It's really peaceful. I used to live at a beach, so I've thought deeply about a beach.
Those were Luke's
about
hobo days
water.
When he just kind of rolled around on the beach for a while there.
Well, I mean, sometimes I fell asleep on the beach, but that's different. But I would always contemplate, like there's a whole world down there where none of the skills I have matter.
Well, they're not even applicable.
I mean, I can't see. So,
Yeah.
for example, like any more than 800 feet and virtually no sunlight is getting down there, but some is.
Well,
past 3,000 feet, it's the blackest black you can ever imagine.
It's as futile to try to function in that environment as if you were just in the vacuum of space.
Right. It's just
if
as foreign.
If you're just thrown in.
There's one difference, though. There's insane life down there. Like,
Well,
I
as
was
far as we
watching
know, yeah.
the deep ocean part of Blue Planet, and holy shit, like, you think you're watching aliens in the deep ocean.
Well, you know what's funny about that is that if you tweeted out, oh my god, live NASA video of some probe on some moon
it could just be Earth
underwater
yeah.
and just tweeted that out, a lot of people would retweet that probably.
Well, I mean, they look like aliens, so
Yeah, no,
for
I'm
anybody
not
listening
saying
that
that as
doesn't
like,
know what the deep ocean creatures look like at all.
some of them are wacky as
I really
fuck.
can't do it any justice. You just have to look it up.
Yeah, you're like, why are those teeth like that?
The craziest
Why are those
of
eyes
things
like that?
and you get the craziest of evolutionary tricks where certain fish are learning how to.
That dude has a nose. Why?
Well, I mean, the craziest one I saw last night was a certain fish who would take the little bit of light that's coming down from the surface, and similar to like a chameleon, it reads that wavelength of light, and then makes itself completely transparent to these hunter fish that live below it.
Yeah.
But then these hunter fish out-evolved them and detected this special vision that was like, it was sort of like the predator, how he could just see in the forest. It didn't matter, right?
Well, he could see
they have
infrared
that
or
kind of
some
vision.
shit
It's
like
like,
that, yeah.
oh, you're pulling that trick on me? Turns out I figured that out. Like, and they just swim up and fucking eat them. And then it's like dead fish.
Yeah.
You know, like it's life or death down there, and they're playing dirty little tricks, and they're spitting out bioluminescent.
But that's what I mean. Like you look at examples like that, and I think to myself, why have we not just sent a robo submarine to the fucking methane seas of Titan? They're there.
Yeah.
We know they're there. We know where they are. We know they're big. Some of those seas are big.
We have sent some things to Titan, I think.
Oh, we've sent probes.
Yeah.
We've sent probes that have landed, but send a fucking
But you
mini
now have
submarine.
you now have to land the probe, figure out where to go to drill, and then how to drill and how to send that information back.
No, you don't need to drill. That's different from the ice oceans of like Enceladus or Europa or some of those frozen planets that have the underwater ocean. Titan is solid. It's the only other body.
It's kind of Earth-like, yeah.
Well, it's closer to Earth than in some ways than Mars or Venus.
Can you
it
sum
has
up
surface.
For anybody listening who doesn't know about these, like the moons of different planets and
So to start with Titan is a moon of Saturn, and it's a pretty big moon. It's bigger than our moon, actually, and it's so cold there because Saturn's obviously farther out in the solar system than Earth is by a large degree. It's past Jupiter, and it's the next planet after Jupiter. But it's so cold that water freezes into ice and acts like just another solid, like a rock surface, whereas methane is able to be at liquid form at that temperature. I forget the exact temperature, but it's fucking cold. So they have so much methane that it forms into these seas, and I think it has about 1 atmosphere of pressure, Titan, too. So it's really cold, but pressure-wise, it's very similar to Earth, and they have these seas, these oceans, but they're just of a different element, which is methane, and they're pretty expansive, and they found evidence of not huge waves like we have here on Earth, just because methane acts very differently as a liquid at that cold of a temperature, but there is wave movement to some degree, so there is at least some sort of motion, and who knows what that could lead to in terms of what might be going on under there. I just think it's something that I'm hoping within the next few decades we get our acts together and send something there, because I just want to see pictures from the seas on another very Earth-like body in that sense.
Two things worth saying. You were saying liquid methane. So every element can be found in the stages of matter: liquid, gas, solid.
But it's got to be
depends on the.
It's got to be that specific window of temperature.
And pressure.
It's
always about the temperature and pressure. It's the triple
that's
point
like we were saying
example.
about Jupiter and metallic hydrogen. You can have a metallic hydrogen ocean, but it's got to be 8,000 degrees on Jupiter under a bunch of thousands of miles of clouds,
And pressure. Yeah, exactly. Which is, by the way, pressure, when we say water pressure or air pressure, it's literally just the weight of that
Yeah,
the pushing
the other
down
liquid on
force,
top
the
of
weight
it, yeah.
of that.
On top and around.
And if you've ever carried like a bucket of water, or like I remember playing sports and like certain people would always have to carry
a bucket
like
of water,
the,
it's heavy.
Carry the water cooler for the whole team.
Yeah.
Water is very, very heavy, and that's
Yeah.
why you can't go that deep in the ocean without, like a scuba diver can't
Yeah,
go that deep.
you gotta
Your
be
lungs
prepared.
will crush.
Yeah.
Now, what is...
It's a little over 7 pounds per gallon.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
Now, what is the
That's
trick
dense.
that creatures that can live like 10,000 feet down, let's say, what is the trick that they figured out?
They're aliens.
They're mostly water, like jellyfish.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what's the one thing that can push against water just fine?
More water.
Water.
Yeah.
We're mostly, like our lungs crush under the weight of water. Right?
Well, we've evolved out of that,
Exactly.
that environment. Yeah, and so
that's crazy. Mammals, we evolved out of water and we went on land, but then some mammals decided to go back in the water, and that's how you got whales and dolphins
Exactly.
and stuff, right?
penguins,
Like,
which took to the air and then came back down.
So evolution
Yeah.
is filled with
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
like funny little
Yeah.
things. I was
Big
playing
time.
Joe a video just before that. There's a time where fish branched into two distinct, different types of fish. So
Tasty and tastier, yeah. I like them
about
both.
420 million years ago, the bony type of fish split into two types: ray-finned fish and lobe-finned fish. Ray-finned are like those like very thin, flimsy like fins. You
Not
know,
tasty.
I don't know about their taste, but the lobe-finned
Like a
ones have
tuna?
these like meaty appendages, and they have bones that attach those appendages.
That sounds a little more human.
And as they started to occupy shallower and shallower waters and living in the weeds of shallow waters, they eventually crawled onto land,
Right.
Well,
and-
our large moon is a part of that too. Our moon to our planet size is huge, and it's very rare.
Well, it's the
to
big.
have
It's
it.
the biggest comparison or proportion in the solar
Right.
system. Yeah.
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 It's for the size that Earth is. The moon is gigantic for how close it is.
Yeah.
But it causes like the tides. That's a lot of wave action. 6 feet of difference.
Yeah.
Well, they
twice
think
a
that
day.
was a-
so that helps to rinse the land, the
Yeah.
movement, which would lead more animals to go up.
Right.
on-
They think that was a
on
big
land,
part of
too.
evolution. Yeah.
So the tides not only
You could have had
on
100
Earth,
mile tide pools, that just
Well,
flood
especially
every day.
a billion years ago, even when the Earth was closer, the moon was closer,
and tides were more extreme.
tides would have been more extreme. So the tidal pools would have been sick. They would have been pretty wild.
We were just talking.
So I mean, like a
before-
continental, like all of California was a giant, was the size
yeah,
that big as a tidal pool.
yeah,
You're gonna
you-
get a lot of stuff coming in and trying to make a go of it.
Right.
a lot of fish poop and stuff.
And a lot of it doesn't make it, but it
that's
only
it.
takes some of it, and then you got monkeys and trees.
So like this. I mean,
was a
everybody
complete
knows
sentence.
about the tides, but like it's easy to not think about it so much.
Well, the tides come in and the tides go out.
Right,
I
as
heard
Bill
once.
O'Reilly might say, tides go in, tides
you
go
can-
out.
can we
You
link
can't
that in the
explain
description?
We can link that.
We'll link it in the description.
There's a video where Bill O'Reilly, the old Fox News host, was
Who got
having
fired
a back
for
and
sexual
forth
harassment
with some
officially.
atheist, right? And he's sort of like he's trying to give the God of the Gaps argument,
Yeah.
which the God of the Gaps argument is like there are things in science you can't explain, so aha, there you go, that's
Yeah.
God.
Like
right?
why the sun goes around the Earth.
Well, I mean, again, I'm of the place where I can push it far enough to be like, yeah, it is a mystery, but for the wrong reasons than
No,
what
but
you think.
I mean, at a certain point, people would have said that.
Yeah.
They would have been like, well, why does the sun go around the Earth?
Oh,
you'd be
yeah,
like, it doesn't. And be like, well, execute.
and that's
I
the
like-
flaw of God of the Gaps is that
Yeah.
the gap always shrinks because we learn.
That's
more
what I
and
like
more.
about it. Yeah, but according to that
And
definition,
Bill
God
O'Reilly-
gets weaker every year because he loses
God's
more
applying
of
for
his
food
domain to
stamps now.
science, right?
He's applying for Trump food
So
boxes.
we're slowly killing God, I guess.
if
I'm
that's the argument that you adhere to, the God of
Right.
the Gaps argument.
But the funny part of the Bill O'Reilly one was he didn't even use anything that was a mystery. He used the thing that like fucking has been figured out for a while. We got that one in the books.
Aristotle knew
How do the tides
that
work?
shit,
What
yeah.
are the equations for gravity? We know that shit. Like,
well, nobody
use
was really
something
ever
more
arguing
interesting.
that. Were they?
94% of the universe is unexplained, dark energy and dark matter. Why don't you like use that as your God of the Gaps? Why don't you use the 95% of the ocean that's never been looked at? That's a good,
Yeah.
place to use. It's like for the God of the Gaps thing, I would respect it if someone was actually pointing to a gap and not pointing to a gap in their own, knowledge.
Right. It's a gap that you could easily fill in by Google.
or Wikipedia, or Google then Wikipedia.
Even Ask Jeeves would take care of it for you.
We'll take Ask Jeeves on that one. Like how
We'll
why do
throw
the
Jeeves a
tides
bone.
come in and tides go out? You can't explain that,
Yeah.
Should I just play it? We have that capability now.
Can you do it? Can
Yeah,
you
why
make
don't
it
you cue that up?
bring it
Well, I have a question. Speaking of mammals, aquatic mammals, if you guys are familiar with the aquatic ape theory, which I find very interesting.
I really, even if I were, I would need your take on it, and I'm not. So go for it.
I want you to keep talking, basically.
Yeah.
So the aquatic ape theory is that because we are very different than other primates. So,
In what way?
it's the idea that we kind of, we don't have a lot of hair. We're very, we're pretty fine and hairless, and our limbs are more proportional to the rest of our bodies than them. They got much longer arms and shorter legs, and they don't really walk upright as often. But so the theory is that we, especially when you go back in our evolution, there's a lot more things that could kill us. That's why you kind of had to swing around in the trees to outrun giant fucking saber tooths and just predators that would love to eat a big fat monkey that's a lot of protein, So one of the theories is that we took to the water, and you know how your fingers get
Webbed?
when your fingers are in the water
get
for
wrinkly
too
in the
long.
bathtub.
Yeah, the wrinkly. That the theory is that because that actually is folding your skin absorbs the water, and you actually get more surface area. That's why it gets wrinkly. So it'd be easier to grip tools and things underwater. Was the thought of that?
Spider watermen.
So
Interesting.
yeah, like some kind of
Interesting.
like a mermaidy kind. So if we lived along the coast, Did
you say
and
mermaid,
Let's
Johnny?
say. Yeah, I slipped that in there. But if you live along the coast and let's say, a pack of fucking dire wolves are coming to eat you, you can just take to the water.
And the wolves don't
also-
have wrinkly paws that allow them.
Right.
Whoa.
And we're pretty omnivorous, so there's always been a lot of food in coastal areas. So
Can I ask you a question?
and that might there wouldn't be a lot of records of that because the same reason there's not a lot of ancient coastal cities. A lot of them are in deserts and stuff because that shit gets washed away by the tide. So if we did have really primitive tools because we were aquatic ape men hundreds of thousands of years ago, there would be very little evidence of it.
Well, a lot of it's
But
underwater,
It's just
too.
a cool idea to think about.
Have you seen that orangutan spearfishing? I'll
No.
believe anything.
Yeah.
Can you cue that up, too?
Anyways, I'll cue that up. But here's the Bill O'Reilly, and this is sort of a version that has Neil deGrasse Tyson like.
Wait, this is him and Neil deGrasse Tyson?
No, but Neil deGrasse Tyson's talking about this.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I should play the original version real quick. It's this.
I'll tell you why.
A man that was built by a man?
I'll tell you why it's not a scam, in my opinion. All right? Tide goes in, tide goes out. You can't explain that.
So
You can't
his
explain
basic
that.
idea is tide goes in, tide goes out. You can't explain that.
No,
Therefore,
you
you're
can't
an
explain
idiot
it.
for being an atheist.
Fuck you.
So this is Neil deGrasse Tyson's sort of rebuttal to that.
Oh, I've seen this. This is good.
Now, when you talk about these things, somebody in the audience must come up, I assume, and say, well, we only understand 4% of this stuff.
Yeah, that's great.
So
I love it.
How is that different from Bill O'Reilly saying, well, in that case, the rest of it's gone? You guys are just expounding beliefs here. You've got no evidence for the 96%.
The difference is we do understand the tides. The tides are part of the 4% we understand. So Bill O'Reilly's giving a list of things that are fully understood. If he had given a list of things that are not understood, okay, that would be a different reaction.
Right.
And it would be less susceptible to comedic mockery.
Right. That's the key I remember. He
It would
say
be less susceptible to comedic mockery.
Yeah. But only less susceptible.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that's a key
because
word,
that's
yeah.
the point. Is the God of the Gaps already doesn't work, but Bill O'Reilly
Is
didn't even
particularly
make
bad
it the
at it.
less
Yeah.
susceptible version. He
Yeah.
made it the most, which is tide goes in, tide goes out. You can't explain that. It's like no, you can't. Plenty of people can.
Can you explain it?
Yeah.
So I can pretty well, and then I can't when it gets to the math part. That's
Yeah.
always my ticket out. Is I do not.
Well, that's where God's hanging out.
Yeah, you're
That's
making
what
God's hanging
he's
out in
doing
the
all the-
math, dude.
Yeah, you're making assumptions
Yeah.
like the moon is real. I mean, that's on you. I can't change your mind about that.
So the thing about tides that I just remembered why I brought up tides was the only reason that oceans could exist on moons like Titan, Europa is a moon of Jupiter we mentioned, is that the tidal forces of the like Jupiter and Saturn are such big planets,
Right.
that the tidal forces they exert on the moons are so much that the actual rock of the planet is moving back and forth, and that creates friction, and friction creates heat, right?
Yeah.
And so it's heating up underneath the surface of these moons enough that we know liquid water must exist.
Well, that's Titan's not that case, but all the ice ones are. Yeah.
The icy ones.
So like in Enceladus, I think Enceladus is actually, because Europa and I think Ganymede are the two of Jupiter that have icy surfaces but underwater oceans for that reason. And I think Enceladus is the one that's a moon of Saturn that does that as well, because of, like you say, the tidal, what you would call tidal forces.
So just
or
like
whatever,
we all know that, like, water, if you just sit at a beach, you'll see the water come in, or
and the tide
it looks like the water comes in and the water goes out. But literally what's happening is there is always a bulge of water
somewhere
facing the moon.
Yeah.
Pulled towards the moon, wherever the moon is. However, Earth is also spinning. So what you're actually experiencing when the tides happen is you are on the solid Earth and you are spinning underneath the water that is bulging. And so you're actually spinning towards the bulge of water. And we see that as water coming towards us, but really we're spinning into a bulge of water. That's the tides, right? That creates a friction that will eventually slow the rotation of the Earth enough that we will become tidally locked to the moon, so that the same side of the Earth always faces the same side of the moon.
Which is ironic because
we do already.
Well, no, the moon.
No,
is
the
tidally
same side of the moon always faces the Earth, but we spin underneath that still.
And we'll be. I mean, the other way to think about it is that we'll become tidally locked to the sun, which is what happens to a lot of planets that are closer to their sun, or they're much smaller than their.
Like
their
those
star.
binary, like.
Yeah, like if you're in a system, that's why a lot of moons become tidally locked, because there's so much. Even our moon.
It took about 1,000
Earth.
years for our moon to basically be locked, I think.
After it formed.
After it formed, it was doing like this crazy ballet of like cosmic proportions.
But how do you define like its formation? Like we don't even quite know how it was formed.
I mean, they think it was an asteroidal impact that knocked a big chunk of Earth off.
But you don't you even from that, like because I've read a little bit about that, and there seems to be very little, not very little, but there seems to be a lot of conjecture or debate in terms of like how much of that was whatever proto body crashed into us versus the Earth itself.
I think it's definitely an unknown for sure.
Yeah.
But as far as I remember, they think it was an asteroidal impact. They just the details are a little murky.
You're right in the definitely with the idea that, and this is an important distinction too with some other moons, that some moons are just captured. Like you look at the moons of Mars, Phobos and Deimos, and those are both captured asteroids, I believe. And there are other moons in the solar system that are that same way. And maybe even,
are they round? Those ones you just mentioned?
They're so small. No, I think like one is 6 miles or 6 kilometers in diameter, and the other's like 13. They're very small.
It takes a certain mass to become round.
But I think exactly, and I think the Earth's moon is one of the few moons that may have its origin from the Earth itself.
That's what's so weird about it.
Yeah, that's why it's
how
so
big.
Yeah, exactly. That's why.
How could it have gotten so far inside the solar system before it got caught in our orbit? Orbit, there's so many bigger things that should have pulled it.
Well, look at Jupiter. How many moons do you think Jupiter has?
Like 60 or no? It's over 100.
It's
I think.
At least over 60. Yeah, it's at least. And that's because it's the biggest,
I was also reading that
no surprise.
the moon has earthquakes too. Its core isn't totally, isn't totally inert. It's just a lot smaller. And since it is such a smaller body, that they think it rings like a bell. You just can't hear it.
I've heard about that.
But, But the way it's so tiny when it gets moonquakes, which is a great word.
Isn't that like part of hollow moon theory?
What?
Like, because they measured that on the moon, when the Apollo astronauts were there or whatever, where it would they measured like these moonquakes or something, and it was like these small vibrations. They could measure them around the moon or something like that, or they would circle around the moon like a bunch of times, like would happen with a bell, because a bell is hollow. And that's part of like hollow moon theory, that the moon's a space station or some shit like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it probably was just hot and then cooled.
Or any other
and
actual
shrunk.
science.
Some other science. But yeah, no, I don't know, man. We don't see the dark side of the moon. Who knows what's there?
Have we seen it? Is there a picture of it? Can we bring that up? Can we cue that?
I mean, there's pictures, if you believe them. But
I don't think
you
most
can't
people
check it out for yourself.
I don't think most people know that the
India has a rover going, I think this month or next month. They're launching a moon rover that's not coming back. It's just a one-way thing, but I think China has a few planned. A bunch of countries are like using the moon as
NASA just announced
to test their space.
I think
agencies.
NASA's trying to get back to the moon like soon. I think in 2019. I don't know if I don't think it's manned, but like to land shit there to start to build a moon base or some shit like that.
Well, I think they just we probably have good enough batteries now that they can put like a permanent station there with a solar panel, like a permanent device collecting thing.
I feel like
you think about when we used to send shit in the 70s compared to what we could do now. Did you see the selfie the Mars rover took?
Which one?
They turned the newer one, Opportunity, I think.
No, I mean
Curiosity.
which selfie?
Whatever.
I've definitely seen Mars rovers take selfies.
Oh, well, this one, because it's up there for so long that they just start doing stuff it wasn't designed for. They're like,
they live past their missions, these rovers, by like decades almost.
So they turned around the microscope camera and zoomed it out and took like a blurry selfie of it. But it's also just a convenient way to check on it and the status of it to see if it's been fucked up or not. Like,
yeah, but that's kind of
now. My question is, if Mars had oceans and an atmosphere, and Mars is tidally locked,
is it?
Its plates don't move anymore.
No, tidally locked. Tidally locked just means that you always face your like host body, like whatever.
Okay, well then, whatever it is when the plates lock up, but the tectonic plates or whatever.
I don't know.
Mars.
I don't know what you would call that exactly, but I know what you mean. It's like Mars got to a certain point where the
my question is,
the planet sort of settled.
Oh, the plate tectonics of Mars.
They're dead.
Stopped, and when that happened, it lost its magnetic.
It lost everything. It
magnetic
lost
field, and when that happened, the solar wind stripped its atmosphere.
So if you were either a conscious being, like society living on Mars at the time, or just an unconscious animal trying to survive, or bacteria or whatever, wouldn't it make sense that you'd go underground? And like, how far underground?
He's getting into.
Would you have to go if you were smart enough to know that your planet? Like, if you were a smart enough society to know your planet was losing its atmosphere, could plan ahead. You'd be able to say, well, once we lose our magnetic thing, like,
are you trying to say that
we have to go this deep? So my question is, how far do we have to drill into Mars to find the people there?
You're saying how far do we have to drill into Mars to watch Total Recall? Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
So my question would be, what are the chances of that same scenario, but like deep in the ocean? Like, what do you think about like some advanced,
like how advanced,
like advanced like whale. Like society down in the ocean where they're just like whale. I'm just picturing like a judge whale that's like swinging the gavel, like guilty.
Can he swing it with his
You
tail?
are banished to the Pacific Northwest to be watched by whaling ships and possible Japanese whalers. You get kicked out of their societies. And they have to come live near the surface.
It's so mysterious, and like we almost don't know anything about the deep ocean. Like, it could be anything, right?
Well, what if mermaids are real? And when we first started knocking about in wooden ships all over the place, the few times they said hi, they like fucked them and tried to eat them, and they're like, "Oh, fuck that! We're not going up there anymore."
Can you say that in the appropriate terminology?
What if the mermaids are just hiding from us now because they're terrified of humans, rightfully so?
Right.
That's possible.
And are the mermaids like your monkey theory where monkeys went back in the water?
Yeah. Maybe.
He thought for a second. He's like, yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah. No, that fits. It all fits. The science checks out.
Yeah. You can't explain that.
But seriously, how I don't think it's that unreasonable to think that there's at least some extremophile microbes living under Mars.
Well,
there's
especially because
still down there.
Did you see the shit that they I think it was maybe NASA released a few weeks ago about they mapped all this fucking frozen undersurface ice on Mars with this. I don't know what they used, but they were able to map like.
I don't know if I heard about that.
It's frozen water, and it's there's a lot of it, and it's just under the surface because obviously all the surface water.
So what if there's underground oceans below that, and it's just the outside's frozen? You know, I think we should send a giant drill to Mars with a probe attached to the end and just drill as deep as
That's
you
an
can.
idea.
Cole Elon, I'm sure he'd be.
No, I
interested.
mean that is an idea, and then the thing is, well, how do you be sure that you don't just infect it with Earth life like we talked about
but
earlier?
why do you care about?
That's why
infecting
we
with
should do
Earth
it
life?
now before we.
Because they want to know if they're discovering life on
Yeah,
another
but
planet.
when
or
have
not.
we given a shit about not just tossing our shit wherever
I mean,
we
NASA's
want?
different than just like people like colonizing some.
Yeah,
different
but guess who's going to get to Mars before NASA? Elon
people
Musk.
wanting to make money.
businesses. Yeah.
No, Elon Musk is going to get there.
I mean, I'm sure he's driven by profit somewhat.
He's
right?
definitely driven by profit, but he is so good at being driven by profit that he's able to fund crazy shit like building a Mars colony.
Right.
Like he's going to be able to he has all these space contracts to launch satellites into orbit, and he's only going to get better at it, and he's going to get into asteroid mining and shit, and he's going to be like, yeah, it's funny because like that article, remember that I showed you the Guardian article that was just diarrhea, like bashing.
Yeah, check out our YouTube
Elon
channel.
Musk.
Joe rips apart this. Really, I mean, shitty is the word for that article. It was
trash.
Just shitty. It was
Yeah.
trash.
It's a trash opinion about how. Well, the point is that it characterizes Elon Musk's SpaceX company as a pet project, basically. And it's ironic because the company isn't the pet project. Going to Mars is the pet project. His company is actually a viable company that they're planning, I think, later this year to send astronauts.
Why not go after like Dippin' Dots if you're just going to go after companies that work?
Yeah, billionaire dick companies that like waste money on frivolous shit. But he's sending
Sorry,
astronauts.
Dippin' Dots. If you want to sponsor us, I'm going to sell out. I know that.
But he's replacing the fucking Russian capsules that the U.S. outsources to. Like
the Soyuz.
NASA pays Russia like a crazy amount of money to bring stuff up to
I think it's like
station
it's
that,
like $60-something
that
million
we
a
helped
seat.
spearhead.
Whereas the Falcon Heavy test
whole
launch was $90
launch
million, and it launched a fucking car to Mars orbit.
I was at a taping of the Colbert Report back in, it was like 2010, and it was like, well, I don't know the exact year. It could have been 2009 too. But it was exactly when we announced that we're ending our space shuttle program. Yeah. And guess who the guest was that night?
Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Exactly.
Wait, did he talk about it?
And that was the first time I had ever heard of Neil deGrasse Tyson. And from
That's
there
awesome.
on, it's been like a YouTube-fueled journey, you know?
Fuck,
like,
that was like 10 years ago, dude.
God.
Yeah. It's funny how time flies. Wait, weren't we supposed to talk about the oceans?
Yeah. So, Johnny, can I tell you a random thing I found most funny about the ocean?
Yeah, you haven't done a
jellyfish. Jellyfish, their mouth hole is the same as their anus hole.
I knew this was going to devolve. What does that mean, the same? How do you characterize the same?
There's one hole, food goes in, poop comes out.
Couldn't you say that?
How is that
explain
not
it. That's
clear?
God.
Oh, I see.
That's God right there.
Wait.
You explain it. How does the poop go in and go out, Joe?
Poop goes in, poop goes out. You can't explain that.
I think I need another beer.
Thank you, Luke. That's what I was going for.
That's what I think.
So even though jellyfish are 95% water, they have these sort of like net-like nervous systems that sort of just control the undulations that they do.
Yeah.
Mysterious stuff.
They don't quite seem real jellyfish. I've never quite...
Please don't ever use that word again.
What?
Undulations.
I feel like it's not used enough.
You did like
it's not
you
used
did
enough.
a little
I felt pretty
undulate.
good
You
saying
undulated.
it.
Yeah, but you undulated while you did it.
Yeah, you did.
Oh yeah, we're not video
Undulation.
yet. We actually probably could very easily just record these webcams, like at least the shitty cameras, and like post the video on YouTube.
Are we doing that right now?
No.
We'll do that next episode if you like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
So Johnny, I don't think I may have told Joe already, but have I told you like the lobster thing I read about recently?
Not
Speaking
specifically.
of
I'm sure
oceans.
we've talked about lobsters, but
Probably. Or at least some type of crustacean, right?
hey, what's the difference between a dirty
I really like where this is going.
a dirty Greyhound station and lobster with big tits?
What?
You don't ask the one's cousin out to a date. No, I don't.
What?
I don't know. I barely actually comprehended.
Wait.
the joke.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything better than that. Go ahead.
One's a crusty bus station, and the other's a busty crustacean. It's a really stupid joke, but it got lit.
I think we're ready for the coffee porter.
Yeah. So this interesting.
So what about lobsters?
Lobster fact is, I just started reading this new book by the psychologist Jordan Peterson. Some of you may have heard of him before. He's become more popular online recently for various reasons.
So you're saying?
One of them
I think he's Latino. I'm pretty sure he likes to be called Jordan Peterson.
He's Canadian. Sorry. He does have a Canadian accent. It comes out.
It does, yeah.
So if you're hearing that name and thinking something controversial, just consider reconsidering and just look into it more, because there's a lot of smear campaigns out there after him. So anyways, I bought his book that just came out, and it's called 12 Rules for Life. And it's sort of his
men's domination to success. Go ahead, continue.
Yeah.
Just Google it. You'll see what I mean.
To navigating the patriarchy. Yeah.
So the first chapter is called this first rule is called sit up straight with your shoulders back, and it's about why it's important to have good posture, and our sort of neurological systems can be traced back very, very cleanly to lobsters and the sort of hierarchies that lobsters exist on. And so lobsters are constantly fighting for domination.
All the way down,
right?
yeah.
Male lobsters are fighting so that the female lobster will mate with them, those kinds of things, right?
Nice.
And so what happens is
You gotta get those
when
claws
a
going.
lobster wins a fight, its posture opens up and it becomes bigger, right? And its serotonin levels go up. So it's a very simple nervous system that responds very well to this. There's a hormone duo between serotonin and I'm forgetting the name of the other one, but it's sort of a regulatory system. And when serotonin is high, the lobster opens up. It faces fights with confidence and doesn't really back down, right?
How does it win a fight, though?
Well, usually the lobsters will, the one that loses will actually not even fight and just leave right away. But occasionally,
they fight over space, right? So it's
over space, over mating rights.
Spot.
It's territorial.
So
usually
he backs down. Yeah, I think it's a lot of backing down and posturing, right?
It's a lot of posturing, and then it's a lot of the other one scurrying away out of fear, right? And so what ends up happening is if a lobster loses a fight, it scurries away, its serotonin levels shoot down, and its posture closes.
Right.
And then the next fight it encounters, it's like, I forget the exact numbers, of course, but it's extremely more likely to back down out of all future fights.
Right.
Now, here's the crazy thing.
They all lose to nets.
Well, not all of them, actually, but...
Oh, man. The ones with their shoulders really...
I don't know about lobsters, but I know fish have learned to avoid nets. But that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah, but as you would want to.
So here's the trippy part, and how it connects to humans even more strongly. When you give Prozac to a lobster...
Why would you do that?
Guess what happens to its posture? It opens back up, and it goes and fights.
Ah, I see.
So there's a relationship between serotonin and this sort of taking life on, having this open posture, which combines with this sort of confidence towards life and sort of willingness to face the next battle. And these deep structures of our own nervous system go back hundreds of millions of years to lobsters.
So ours isn't fundamentally different. It's just been built on, and it's more complex. Is that
yeah, exactly. And when you feel depression, when you feel states like that, it's not just a head thing; it's a body thing, and it actually moves through your body, and it affects things like your posture, and often just tricking yourself to switch one of those. Like if you just pull your shoulders back, you'll find your attitude towards the world changes.
And the world will probably change towards your attitude, right?
Oh, people respond when you have good posture. And when you have shitty posture, it shows people that you can be walked all over, right?
Yeah. Right.
I've learned this as a
That makes sense,
performer. I
yeah.
used to, when I was younger, I used to watch videos of myself performing, and I would walk out on stage with my shoulders curved and forward because I was like that's what my mental state was.
God, that's so true with teaching too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What do you want to look like, a pathetic loser up there, or do you want to fucking have the
I caw right at my student's face. I go up to them. I start pecking.
Yeah. I really think you ought to have, like,
proverbially, of course.
Well, no, I think it's
Intellectually.
It's good. I've made gorilla sounds while teaching before.
Give me an example.
Well, so I stand
I
up.
think that's a hate crime, Luke.
He stands up. That's the first key. He stands up. He gets up on his hind gorilla legs.
No, I learned this at a chamber music seminar when I was in high school.
Yeah,
and the tuba teacher there, our group just wasn't quite like bringing the right energy, and he just was trying to get us to be more like, like fucking nature, right?
Yeah.
So he puts his instrument down and he stands up. He's like, he has kind of a southern accent, but
no, go ahead, do it. Yeah.
He said, "Have y'all ever seen a silverback gorilla?" And I was a senior in high school.
And then he unzipped his fly. And
by the way, the coach we had right before this was talking to us. He's like, "You guys don't really sound like you're playing together. Have you guys like hung out and gotten drunk together?" And we all looked at him. We're like, "We're 18." He's like, "So no,"
Yeah.
And now the next coach was like, "Have you all seen a silverback gorilla?" And we're like, "This is weird. I thought you were gonna teach me like how to play scales better."
He's teaching you life, which will help you with scales.
And then he stands up and
go get
he
that jug of Crisco over there, boy. Tell us more about your horrifying rape camp stories. Like,
so this guy starts doing an impression of a silverback gorilla. He's just like, and like the movement and
I want that meth.
So I actually have done that a few times because like I'll have
you haven't.
In teaching, yeah.
Okay, give me an example.
So I'll have students that are just not bringing any energy. And I just like what can I do like more than making a silverback gorilla impression than to show them like, please, like, make some sound.
How do you do it? Can you give me the impression?
I mean, it's going to be too loud for a microphone.
This podcast, I'm just not interested anymore. Can we just like have a sandwich? He's got the arms.
Yeah, the arms are the key.
That was really good. I'm glad you did that now.
You really got huff in there.
Do you feel amped up now? You got serotonin?
I'm ready. I'm ready to podcast. Look, I'm postured. I'm ready to podcast. Yeah,
so,
this is
folks,
good.
Keep your shoulders back and sit up tall and face the world. And
like
that's something that can be learned from lobsters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, shit. I forgot lobsters. Face the world
there used to be laws in colonial America about how much lobster you could feed to a prisoner. Because they used to, it was considered a cruel punishment to feed them only lobster and like not give them bread and stuff at some point.
Well, yeah, if I just fed you like anything, you'd be like, that's cruel punishment, right? You'd be pissed off if I fed you nothing but Oreos in prison, right?
It's true.
After like week 2,
I mean,
definitely.
unless you're a child, you'd be
just
pretty pissed.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just weird to think about. Like, you wouldn't imagine there'd be a restriction on how much steak they can give you. Like, oh, you can only have so much steak. It's just lobster is such a high-priced thing now.
But it was abundant back in the day, like in colonial times. There would have been fucking giant
right, and the lobsters
everywhere.
they ate probably didn't taste great because they were probably the super mature ones that were easy to catch. The old ones that, old meat tends to be.
Well, it's because their backs were so straight.
Well, if they were winning fights, they were.
There used to be. There's reports of like 3-foot lobsters in New England when the colonists first came, and they were probably like 50 years old. But all the lobsters we eat now are like 20 years old at the oldest.
There's actually really interesting things about how big an organism can get, because that size often was in the early Earth was determined by how much oxygen was in the atmosphere. Because only in a certain amount of the concentration in the atmosphere can make it into the organism. So if like a dragonfly, for example, was too big,
or
oxygen couldn't, assimilate in to the. But when oxygen levels got really high, there were reports. There are fossils of like dragonflies that are gigantic, like the size of fucking pigs.
There's a really good video about this.
I'm actually not sure about that. Go ahead and double check.
Dude, there's a really good video about this. I forget how to say the name, but it's the In the Nutshell videos, those cartoony videos, kind of.
In the Nutshell?
Yeah, Kurzagat or whatever the fuck it's called. You've seen them.
Did you subscribe to it on our
Yes.
Thunk Tank email?
Yes, it's kind of the like computer animated
I
ones.
have seen it, yeah.
Yeah, but they have one about they have a couple about the size of life, and it goes through the different sizes in life and how the interesting idea behind how organisms act and function and sort of adapt in different environments. Size makes a huge difference because you might increase your surface area by 10%, but you increase your internal volume way more.
Surface area and volume are not the same. Yeah.
So it shows how like, an elephant just walking around, their world is, kind of like more similar to our world than a fly that's almost microscopic that has these crazy webs and it can cling to moisture molecules in the air and swim through the air. Like the air is basically, to them, they live in an ocean.
It's a fluid that they swim in.
Yeah, they live in an ocean. To them, our natural world is an ocean because they've adapted that way and because of their size.
Well, same thing with
so
birds.
Oceans exist on different levels too. Like an atmosphere can be an ocean.
But to a bird, we're just walking around on the ocean floor to like a fish, right? We're like a crab would be to a fish. Is what we are to birds.
I didn't think of it that
They're
way.
They're moving through the fluid the same as a fish.
Right.
We just are stuck, sliding along the bottom.
Well, that's actually interesting you say that because the sea level is just the transition from one type of ocean to another in that sense, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
just less dense from there. It's all a spectrum, right? You have solid, liquid, gas, and then vacuum.
But there's definitely obviously differences enough where like the type of creatures
there's huge differences.
that exist.
Yeah, there's absolutely huge
that's
differences.
what I found so fascinating about the ocean is that the type of creatures you get because you're dealing with this almost like zero gravity world of floating in water. You get the trippiest looking creatures with like intricate designs on their fins, right? One of the things we didn't talk about yet was the bioluminescence. Have you guys
that's
seen,
really wild. I dig that, yeah.
These like little like exploratory submarines will go far down and obviously they have these lights on the front so they can see what the fuck's going on, right? And you shine a light on a fish and it comes back with these rainbow-like colors because there are chemicals inside of the bloodstream of these fish. They're fucking see-through because that's the most advantageous thing. If you're transparent, then you're invisible, right? If you're just see-through. And to the wavelengths of light that exist down there. So they're shining these little submarine spotlights and the things are reflecting crazy things.
That's
like
wild.
Rainbow-like
that blows
colors.
my mind, yeah.
Here's what blew my mind. They turned all of the fucking lights from the inside lights and they turned the outside spotlights off on this submarine in this documentary I was watching last night. And then it was pitch black, the blackest you've ever seen, except for these little, you know how fireflies look at night when they're just randomly blinking all around?
Yeah.
It looked like that, but all different color lights. A purple
That's
one
cool,
here, a
yeah.
red one here. Some of them are decoy lights to avoid getting hunted. Some of them are mating lights, like come, fuck me and make more fish that blink, And then some of them are like fish squirting out ink, and then they swim away from the ink so that the predators go towards the ink with their fucking big teethy mouth open.
Yeah.
They're just going like,
a smoke screen.
and then they
crazy.
just like bite at the ink instead of the actual meaty fish.
That makes me think too that like, what if there are species that just kept evolving from there, and there's space aliens that just live in space. They live in the vacuum of space. They're just up at a higher level.
It gets into the question about like what is life at all. Like there was this one fish down there that the only thing it did all fucking day, 24/7, is sit there with its mouth open and wait for a poor little fish. It's like a fucking like robot who's just like a security camera. And when a fish swims in the wrong angle, clamp, and it eats it. And then guess what it does? Swallows, opens right back up, and waits for the next one.
It's very robotic in that sense, right?
Yeah. But it's life.
But that's why we talked about this in the previous episode. Check out our Kurt Vonnegut episode. I think he says in one of his books how humans devolved from the big brain branch, which didn't work out because it just caused so many fucking problems, and they just devolved back into seal people that just enjoy eating fish all day. And basically his advice is like, lie out in the sun, eat fish, and bang. Like, what else are you going to do? Some organisms don't even get to do all that. And it's like, yeah, you'll get eaten by a shark now and then, but it's better than worrying about like paying your fucking bills.
Well, I guess Joe, you actually accomplished what I was trying to do all day, which was how to sort of connect with this. Like, so when I was seeing the type of life that exists deep in the ocean,
yeah,
and I just highly recommend go to like the type of show like Planet Earth, where
they
there's
have
one
some wild
specifically
stuff.
about
I've
oceans.
seen those. Yeah,
like the whole season is about oceans.
Yeah.
It's called Blue Planet, and I specifically watched the one on deep ocean stuff, and you see these creatures that I mean, besides how strange they look, they're just totally weird. There's also a sense of like oh, it's just like ones and zeros, you know.
Well, you get that on like the bug level too, right?
Yeah, you can see that with bugs,
Yeah.
but like even them we humanize a little bit, right? Like, because they're always busy, they're doing stuff, so it's like, oh, he's going over there to like hang out with Frank, and then
that's why I feel like they're more colony related, or at least in our minds as humans, they're more sort of colony geared or societal geared, whereas fish are just, they're floating around, even if they do have schools that they go to. You know, in general, they're just kind of like, they're hard to pin down because they're so fluid.
They don't go to school.
What do they do?
they swim in a school. They don't go to school.
I would never
like
swim
a
at
place.
my school pool. It's filthy.
That's true. That's good.
Yeah,
So, I don't know. I think, you know,
I'm slipping.
I mean, I just got this feeling like what's different? Is it a sliding scale, or is it an on-off switch in terms of like being able to abstract away from nature and say, okay, we're in this crazy little game called nature, but are we something different, or do we just have to accept the fact that we're right smack fuck in the middle of it? And
we're
like,
just
this is why we're gonna die soon, just like every other species.
We're just a different iteration or wavelength
Yeah.
or whatever you want to call it, right? That's sort of what that question really comes down to.
Have you seen Lars von Trier movies at all?
Yeah, they fuck with you.
He has a
dude.
movie called The Antichrist. He also
Melancholia, right?
Melancholia.
Yeah, that's another one.
If you were to watch any Lars von Trier, I would highly recommend Melancholia.
Well, Melancholia is all about what
Kirsten
you're saying.
Dunst is in it. Kiefer Sutherland.
One of them is really hot.
It's a really great movie, and his other more fucked up ones are the two Nymphomaniac ones.
I haven't seen that.
I would have to say Antichrist, though, is the worst one. Like,
Which has to do
viewer
with fish
discretion
more.
advised. But I think all those movies have this sort of like
There's a
connect back to
not
nature
darkness,
feeling,
but yeah.
and how dark nature is.
yeah.
It's so absolute, and it makes no distinctions where we as humans care.
It comes back to those
Well,
ones
it's not
and
that.
zeros.
It's just. It's impassionate. It's,
yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
the
great way to describe
impassionate
it.
is-
Yeah.
It's just. It
Which
is
is-
what it is.
Right, it's just so absolute, and it doesn't have it, like, it doesn't even pause at the when it's crossing the boundary of like complete human misery.
Yeah.
It's just like, nope, laws of physics are playing themselves out,
And
that's it.
that gets into the question that I often hear about when people say, you start to get into God arguments or something like that. And one of the sort of cards that they pull most often is, well, then why does the universe exist? And the scientific answer is, why not?
Well,
Quantum fluctuations, you can get into all that shit, and it's like, it doesn't have to mean anything.
that's the anthropic principle, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you can't pull the card of like look how unlikely it is for Earth to exist in these perfect conditions that would lead to human
but
life.
it's like the universe is huge.
No, but it's not like that. It's like, hey, we're here asking that question, which means by definition that remote chance that would lead to life did lead to life.
But
It's
but it could also mean that God orchestrated it all.
no, but it of course it could mean anything. I mean,
Right.
ultimately you're leaving an unknown there. If somebody says, "How do you know?" blah blah blah, you'd be like, "Well, that I don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't figured that out yet.
And that
we're
gets,
working on
that
it."
gets into like definition and terminology, which is actually funny because when you start to get into that stuff, I feel like that's what people wind up arguing more about than the actual ideas and data.
And you get
right?
what I sent you today, a lot of the ought versus is. Like,
Yeah,
science can tell
sure.
you everything about what is, but it won't tell you about what ought. Like, go study the deep ocean, great. But that shit's not going to tell you how you should treat your neighbor.
Well, it's funny you say that. I think the best science class I ever had was, actually, it wasn't until college, and I think it was just like general ecology 202 or
Sounds like a bunch of bullshit.
102. Well, that's what I thought going in, because I was like, oh, it's a standard.
Sounds like some of your pinko commie bullshit.
Yeah, I thought it was just like a core requirement class, but it was really cool because the guy was some sort of legit lecturer, scientist type or whatever, who, you know, had to just teach a core requirement class at this university. But the first point that he established from the first class, and that was kind of his vibe throughout the rest of the class, was, I'm not here to tell you about policy decisions that I feel like should be made, or activist decisions that I feel like you should go out and do this or go out and do that. I'm just here to point out the scientific reality based on the data and evidence. And how then you want to deal with that is up to you. So he would get into, you know, climate and climate change and all that, and actually go into the data and the evidence, which is something that a lot of people who, you know, raise their arms, throw up their arms about global warming and climate change don't know anything about the
Ask
science.
them one question about it and they won't have an answer.
Which
I find that so funny.
It's
funny.
it's a problem in the sense of trying to get people on board who are skeptical for whatever other reasons, whether, you know, some of those reasons are more legitimate or seemingly understandable than others. And
I would say they're all understandable, but some of them are
more so than others.
More legit.
So I really appreciated this mindset of, and this is actually a teaching philosophy that I subscribe to myself, where I introduce these ideas of, I'm not going to tell you what to think about politics or any specific type of social or sociological issue or anything like that, or environmental issue, but I'm going to teach you how to, because I'm a writing professor, so I'm going to teach you how to analyze and how to think critically and how to make your arguments with substantial and substantiated evidence. And if you can't do that, you need to rethink your point of view.
Right.
And that gets you to self-assess, and that happens to get you to places where I similarly often are. Not always. I mean, I have students who have very different opinions from me, but they're able to reach those, and it's fine. They're able to reach those places, though, through doing that level of rigorous sort of, whether self-reflection or research or a combination of the two. But that's a vitally important skill.
Which I would argue is, like, if not the same, running parallel to the scientific method.
It's a scientific method of sorts, for sure.
I mean, that's why when people talk about science, I mentioned earlier in this episode, like, yeah, of course, like, we're not ocean experts, but
no,
I think
the
point of what I like about how we hang out and like people that we generally hang out with is they're all the type of people that would be like, oh, did you hear about like that crazy thing in the ocean vents, you know, blah blah blah,
which is really saying, did you hear about that perspective shattering thing, right?
Right. And I think it's healthy to shatter a perspective, right?
I'm fine with it, because if I didn't shatter my perspectives and I stuck with what I thought I knew from when I was like 7 and first was like, oh, hands, basically, you know, I became
you had
cognizant.
Such simple categories of things.
But that's what I mean. I would be a pretty shitty intellectual at this point. You know, if I just stuck to what I initially thought.
Like we were talking in the last episode with Drew, AI simulation, etc. Like, share, and subscribe.
He's getting it.
Like
He's getting it now. Wow, that was good.
That like window of back in the day has shrunk so much. We're expanding, like we're advancing so much quicker now.
Yeah.
That you need to have that self-correcting approach that I think is like, not that any of us are scientists, but we appreciate that scientific method and approach of self-correcting and self-analyzing, because you have to, because things just change so quickly now. If we're not, if you're not like that, you're not going to make it.
Well, you have to be a self-researcher.
Modern world.
You have to be a self-researcher.
Because there's so much bullshit, and there's so many things you have to know about now to survive in the Western world. It used to just be you had to know a couple of things. Like, you all had to know some basic stuff. Like, everyone should know how to make a fire and stuff.
Yeah.
And things like that. And then, like, one thing you were really good at you could bring to the table.
And
that was all you had to worry about. But there's so much more now.
It's because it's not just the Western world. You can't just live in the Western world. You live in a globalized society whether you want to or not. And there's no avoiding that. Even just going out and being like, yeah, I just want to have a job and do my own thing. It's like, there are global factors that influence whatever market you're involved in, whether you're aware of it or not.
Well, it's like right now it feels like such a period of there's so much complacency where people are like, well, of course the system exists in this workable way and it just always will. It's like, not necessarily, because the whole system is comprised of humans. And humans are very imperfect creatures.
And what's scary about that is that, especially in the West to some extent, but especially in America, we're very far removed from a time of chaos and anarchy. You have to go back to World War II for that in Europe, but for us, you have to go back to basically our founding. We kept it off of our territory. You could say the Civil War, maybe.
I was going to say the Civil War.
Yeah, the Civil War is a fair example where that was the last time where you saw the country devolve into anarchy, or a large part of the country devolve into anarchy. Right. World War II for Europe.
And just how important were the deep oceans during that period? Like, local things become so important. Yeah. It's like we just have to survive.
We don't
have resources to explore the Mariana Trench.
Nobody knew
while in a war.
Nobody knew what was going on, and the deep ocean didn't know what was going on. Think of the crazy.
That's what I find beautiful. Is those fish down there in the 10,000 feet down.
But if you showed them the Civil War and just cannons blowing up people's legs, they'd be like, "What in the fuck are those land people doing?"
Oh, you mean like Frank, that guy that the legend Frank who crawled out of the water and just did some other shit? Like, that's what that turned into?
That's what I mean.
That's what he's up to now?
But from the fish perspective to watching people blow up in the Civil War seems crazier to me than the realization of us going and looking at what's going on down there, the craziest shit, right?
How do you integrate it all, though?
So,
I don't.
Joe, you just reminded me of a cool fact about war and oceans.
Awesome.
They kind of overfished the North Atlantic during the Industrial Revolution because there's such a demand in the cities for food and such an explosion in population. So North Atlantic cod, there had been a lot of it fished. You had to go far out. And then during World War II, because of the indiscriminate U-boating, the Germans basically just besieged England because England's an island, they need to import most of their food. They would just attack any ships bringing supplies to the English, but with submarines, so you couldn't find them, these U-boats, which we should do something on sometime. U-boats are fucking terrifying that people lived in them.
That'd be cool.
Killed other people with them.
Yeah, that'd be dope.
But so U-boat warfare, unrestricted warfare, a lot of commercial activity kind of stopped out there to focus on the war effort and stuff. And after the war ended, there was a huge boom in those fisheries because they had been left fallow for a while, and we've just been depleting them slowly. And until the 90s, I think they banned cod fishing in parts of the North Atlantic to try like a temporary ban to try to bring the stocks up, and I don't think it's worked.
Right.
It takes a long time for an ecosystem to adjust like that.
But it only took like 10 years that one time because of the war, because it wasn't fully depleted yet. So submarine warfare, maybe that's the key to
that's something
fish.
that we should talk about too. I feel like we would really be remiss if we didn't talk about the fucking Pacific garbage patch, because that's a fucking I can't find information on that, which is like I see sources about it, but I've yet to find like a real study on this. And if what everything else I read about it is even remotely true, that situation is fucked up. It's not good.
It's so fucked.
It's not good.
I was watching a video.
The fact that they don't know whether it's the size of Texas or the United States is a fucking problem, right?
Which, like, Texas is not big anyways. Like, we got a problem anyways, you know?
It's because plastic. What he's referring to is there's
can you explain it, Johnny?
Pacific Gyre or whatever, and it's this area where currents like dump out in the Pacific as part of the overarching. There's different weather patterns and stuff. There's the Gulf Stream and Santa Ana bullshit. People know about that stuff. The Coriolis effect. Google wind if you want to learn about it. I'm not here to teach you everything.
I'm not here to teach you about fucking wind.
Fucking wind. This is oceans, bitches. So there's an area that's like kind of a dead spot current-wise where things can end up.
Yeah,
it's fine with organic stuff because it'll break down eventually. But plastic will physically break down, but it does it doesn't photodegrade, which is the sun won't just break it down eventually.
Right. It will take hundreds or thousands of years.
Yeah, it doesn't break down organically the way wood would, or something that's normal and made from other meat. So it just breaks down into these tiny particles just by being flushed around the world and the oceans, and so you get this microscopic plastic in everything, and it fucks up.
Found even in the Arctic.
Speaking of worry for global warming, they're worried the plastic could heat up, catch sunlight, and heat up, and heat water temperatures even faster. work as like an insulator if you get enough of it. But I was watching a video for this podcast, and they found a U-boat from World War I, a sunken German one, sunken in the 30s, and on the middle of it, on top of it, they zoomed in, and it was a fucking plastic dinner plate. And the guy's like, "Yeah, everywhere we look on the ocean floor, there's always modern garbage, no matter
that's
how
what I
old
mean.
the shipwreck is or whatever."
And it
there's always
spreads
modern
so
fucking
So
plastic.
I did another YouTube video about that because I've been just collecting garbage at the beach lately because I would normally run on the beach, and this winter
Think about every toothbrush you've thrown out.
No, that's what I mean.
I've never had a wooden toothbrush. They're all plastic.
So here's the
They're
thing.
all in the ocean somewhere.
Well, there's two types of plastic. No, he's right because there's two types of plastic I clean up. The one is plastic that are like bottles or like cartons or something like that, where you can actually recycle them.
Yeah.
You can actually take them or put them in your cans around here at least, and take them to the recycling center. If you haven't seen the video, you should like, share, and subscribe. But
What was that? You kind of slurred through it.
They get the point. If they made it this far into this fucking nightmare episode, this episode that's been half about space, about oceans.
I think that was deliberate. I actually planned that out. I wanted
Did you
it to
really?
be, yeah, because I thought like space is like the up ocean and
yes.
the ocean is the
that's
down
what I
ocean.
thought too.
Yeah.
So, anyways, but I had to start bringing a second bag with me because way more common than those items that you can recycle is the fucking shit that you can't get rid of. Like you say, like a toothbrush. You can't put a toothbrush in your recycling. They won't recycle it. They'll throw it out.
It's not. Yeah, it's whatever plastic it's made out of.
Or
It's
a wrapper,
recycled.
or whatever, a bag
Actually,
from
I was
the
reading
ravioli
that a
bag.
lot of cellophane is actually made from cellulose, and that's biodegradable. Things that like crackers and stuff.
Well, that's
come
what we
wrapped
need,
in.
but there's no impetus to change that. And it's like, okay, if that winds up in a landfill, what does that do? I don't know. Like, what does all that plastic do? Is that good? Is that okay? It's probably better than it being in the ocean.
You know what, you fucking pinko commie
it's one of
bastard?
those-
It's creating future jobs for people that are going to live in our trash-topias.
Oh my God, that's the book I'm writing, Johnny.
From those people?
Johnny, that's the book I'm writing right now. It's about people who live
Oh,
in...
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those
heat?
like, well,
Yeah,
then
that shit's
what
pretty
next? Like, where does it all go? Like, eventually it's
Yeah.
going to fill up, right?
I don't know.
Well, have you?
Neither do I. I
Yeah,
haven't thought it
it's-
through.
But that's
Dude,
that's the thing.
these
I
guys-
ran into when I was collecting beach garbage last weekend. I ran into a guy who was an environmental lawyer who worked for the Parks Department. So this dude, I assume, knows his shit, and he said the same thing. Like where we just looked at each other and was like, I don't know what the answer is. And I'm like, fuck, if an environmental lawyer who works for the Parks Department doesn't know
Thinks
what the
about it a
solution is,
lot,
or even
yeah.
the proposition to try to get to the solution, we're in trouble.
Or he can't even talk about like around the topic at all. you
No,
know?
he's like, yeah, I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
mean,
like,
nobody knows the answer. This is what I find so fascinating.
but we need a shift.
I know,
here.
like,
this
me and-
isn't working.
Me and Joe have been talking like as we meet up randomly, like, yeah, we want to try to do an episode on politics and find a way to sort of like talk about just what we find
How
crazy
wrong
in the
Luke
political
is
world.
about-
And then like this week, definitely, if that were a possibility, we were like, "Ugh, it's just so fucking complicated that like it seemed easier to talk about oceans, you know? And meanwhile, like the little bit of just like getting geeky with the ocean vibe that I did, I'm just like, Jesus Christ, this is a crazy world, blah blah blah.
But,
you know, like,
but I feel like when you talk about politics too, like to me, like, and especially the stuff that we're talking about with plastics and pollution, that is, I like, I understand social issues are important and they're big, but if the world dies,
right?
that shit goes out the window.
But I get this
Yeah,
sneaking.
we all have to survive on the same planet, and then we want to have more stuff than each other. But we
Yeah.
should make that the starting point, even selfishly, to be like, well, let's not fuck up the planet we're competing on.
Yeah, start with
each
tragedy of
other.
the commons, and then worry about social
But
issues.
I get
like,
this sneaking suspicion that some people, it's not that they just don't have the time horizon to realize that like certain local issues are less important than like longer issues that involve like suns eating Earth's or Earth's
Right.
climates getting
gamma
out of
ray
control.
blasts and all that shit.
It's
People
the
almost want
unfortunate
to see
out
the
of
world burn, I think.
Like the Joker.
No, it's the out of sight, out of mind thing. It's
Yeah.
the reason slavery like proliferated in the Western world, in South America, North America, because Europeans, it was far away. They were told it really wasn't that bad. So even though it didn't morally
There were
jive
no
with
CNN
Christian
choppers.
teachings and shit, Yeah, they didn't have to see it or deal with it, so
Yeah.
it happened far away. And you got sugar. You could buy sugar for really cheap in fucking London. That was grown in the Caribbean, so you didn't ask.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's like the
it's the same thing. Like the oceans are the only place on the planet that are just indiscriminately strip mined without any sort of regulation. Like who's governing that shit? You can just go out with nets the size of 747s and just trawl the oceans. Like you can't do that if you went through the mountains and just like had a bear net and scooped all the bears up. Someone would be like, I don't care if you own that land, you can't just net all the bears and turn them into
Right.
tuna meat.
Turn into bear soup.
But if it's like weird
like a
fish, it's like no problem, right?
Well, because they're more alien. It's like you said, how even bugs are more comparable
and you don't
to
see
people.
it. It's
They're
out there.
land
It's not happening.
friends.
It's not them strip mining. A state park in your community. It's happening out in the middle of the ocean. You don't go
There's
there.
definitely a mammal bias that we have.
Yeah, I think that's or
know,
a
like,
land bias even, right?
Well, I mean, like just mammals specifically. Like if you look at the face of a bear or a dog or whatever, like you're bound to read some type of emotion from it. But the only thing I can get from these types of fish that live in the deep waters, or in the case of snakes or sharks, let's say, right? Like there's a sense of nothingness. Like there's no emotional state. They're just like a robot that's either going to eat or not eat. And there's no negotiating with something that's just like a mouth that will either close or not close. If you're a fish and you're just like swimming past these jaws, like you're either dinner or you're not dinner. There's no like decision behind it, or at least it doesn't seem like there is. Probably with mammals, like there also isn't a decision. It just seems like there is. That's the whole free will is not real. What's your take on the free will thing, Johnny? Not free willy, free will.
Well, free willy wheel. No, I mean this
Do you
is
think
the
free
same
willy
argument
had free will?
at some point. But this is the argument that the two great labyrinths of the mind that I say it always comes back to, that I stole from Leibniz, is the composition of the continuum, like how small is everything, atoms, stuff like that, like how far down does it go, like what things are made out of around us, and the predetermination versus free will argument. Like those are the two big questions that everything else you can always end up. That's like the Wikipedia clicking game. The Wikipedia clicking game we were talking about last episode, where you can just pick something and like get to it in a certain number of clicks. It's that. Those are the two big ones, I think. So yeah, the whole free will argument.
So let's say you take this evolutionary perspective where you have ocean creatures and they change with the environment, and over time certain ones crawl out, right, and then become whatever. So we buy that whole thing. Where along that progression, let's say you want to think humans are these like creatures that can choose. They have free will. I can either go here or go there. I can do something or not do it. Where along that continuum did we, suddenly get it? So do orangutans have it?
Yeah, see, that's where it gets hairy.
It gets literally hairy if you're an orangutan.
But yeah, I mean, and that's what I've always asked people about, like reincarnation, because it's like, what do you reincarnate as a human every time? Like, if I'm a bear for 1,000 generations, do I grow enough to upgrade, or do I like team up with something else? Like, is it 2 bears, an eagle, and a pig as a human?
And do you have like vicious bear memories, like buried in there, like controlling your human behavior?
Yeah, or it's like because otherwise you can't keep coming back as an eagle, because eagles evolved from something before that, and when it started becoming an eagle, that thing wasn't allowed to reincarnate.
And at some point, do you come back as like a single cell bacteria?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, do you have to upgrade with the progress then?
So it's really hard to hold the evolutionary perspective in mind, but at the same time believe in things like, oh, humans have a soul. It's like, well, do dogs? Do cats? Oh, they do. So there's pet heaven. Okay, we'll take that. How about guinea pigs? Oh, guinea pigs are a pet too. They have the horses. Yeah. So there's all these like horsey, guinea pig, doggy heavens. But then it's like, how about a snake? And they're like, no snake heaven. Snakes are awful. Heaven. They're evil. It's like, oh,
They're sneaky.
So
Where are
they're
their
just
arms and legs?
biology that is alive and then dies. So that is possible, and drawing a line there is just like, I don't see a space where you can actually draw a line. That's why I conclude that, like, I'm not going to try to draw a line. Maybe there is no soul. Maybe there's nothing. Maybe we're just meat robots acting out our programming,
Well, even if there is like free will, how much is it really up to you? Like, how much are people just even just cultural things to just affect you? Like, oh, I'm going to go get a job and get married and get a house. Like, somebody that does that doesn't want to actually do that.
Yeah.
But they never figure that out. You just go like, so but they, like, was that free will? Like, they just followed their programming, but they did all the things.
Right.
And even when you do follow your urges and decide, I decided that, like, what decided that? It was your, as you like to call it, your wetware meat brain. So it's like, yeah, of course that wanted to eat this or go there or do these things. Like, was that really me deciding, or just my urges?
Did you say, was that really me
convincing
deciding?
me to make these decisions?
Right.
Was it
And
me or
that's
meat
part of
deciding?
And Johnny, the real question would be, is the feeling of making a decision simply, some emotional state that becomes part of my mind, but I didn't actually make the decision. I was just acting out my program.
Well, that's predeterminism, right? It's like
Well, it's
everything from the beginning
determinism.
of time is predetermined, right?
So, like, you have a concept in just philosophy, I suppose, but determinism would be that, the universe had a beginning, and then the laws of physics are simply acting themselves out as time moves forward. And it's like, okay, but in that scenario, even though we can't explain every moment of every quantum state of every atom in the universe and how it's behaving, the point is it is stateable, and that the universe is just deterministically acting out, running out its programming. And there's no
You're
room
not
in
wrong.
there for free will unless you're something that's called a compatibilist,
But is there room
which
for
means
free
that
will?
you
Yeah.
say free will exists on top of that.
But where's Free Willy?
I think the common manifestation of this
Dead.
is because people don't think about their daily lives in these terms. But the common manifestation is when people, they say, "Oh, it's God has a plan." That's something people use to, like, justify tragedies and stuff. Like,
It's
that's
part of God's plan.
Somebody
God's a
that's
dick.
somebody adhering to some determinist bullshit. I mean, ideals by being like,
Yeah, but I'm not
it's all
entirely
part of his
unconvinced
plan,
by that.
Well, that's a determinism, but also with a determiner, whereas determinism
Right.
can also just be the natural, outgrowth of the laws of physics without any creator behind it, Joe, this whole conversation
Yeah.
came up as a sort of bounce back from, like, you look at, like, these deep ocean creatures and there's just no sense of life behind their eyes. Even a shark, which isn't, like, pretty shallow considering, like, it just does its programming and there's nothing. And then we were talking about, like, how do you draw a line anywhere from that to snakes to monkeys to humans, like, to dogs, like, and cats, like, maybe it's all just a slippery spectrum. And I think that's what disturbed me about being reminded of these deep sea creatures. I'm like, I thought to myself last night before I went to sleep, which is a bad time to think this, I was like, there's no reason to think that our project of being humans is anything special.
Sharks
Well, I think
are
it's special
so
because
much
we
older.
assign.
Because we
The idea
say
behind
it is
it that
because
it's
that
special.
helps us survive, right?
Yeah,
To say
but
it's
that works
special.
for the U.S. dollar.
What I mean is, like, yeah, we have
like-
Mozart, but, like, the fish down there have big fangs, and, like, either way, it's like, if we're surviving, we are. If not, then we die.
Yeah, a
It-
lot
it
of
comes down to-
great white sharks have pretty much been the same since
Yeah,
for, like, so long. Sharks are older than trees. Did you know that?
they're older than
The
dinosaurs.
evolutionary,
yeah.
they're
That's
older than
insane,
dinosaurs,
yeah.
but they're older than trees. The planet used to be covered in giant mushrooms and funguses before trees figured out how to, make a go of it. And sharks were still doing their, quote unquote mindless programming then. So
Doo-doo.
you got to respect the
Doo-doo.
game at least to be going for that long.
Yeah.
It's a pretty valid approach.
Yeah, from like a special
To think
standpoint.
that we're gonna
who's
wipe
the
them
winner?
out just.
Well,
just
there's
with
also that
plastic water
aspect to,
bottles
like,
is kinda sad.
warriors and humans. Like, when we see these certain types of special warriors, they have the qualities of those lower forms of life in a respectable way.
Right.
Which
in terms
is sort
of
of like,
functionability.
if I say I'm going to do something, I will do it, right? Let's say a Navy SEAL looks at you in the eye and says, I will protect you. You get this feeling like, oh, this person will do that mission until they don't exist, you know? Not like this supposed security guard outside of the school shooting who like didn't go into the building.
Wasn't there 3 of them, it turned out?
I haven't followed it
It
closely.
was 4.
It was 4?
I think it's 4 altogether.
But there's something in the heroicism of human beings that it captures the energy of these kind of like ruthless fish, but it combines it with like the wisdom of being a wise monkey,
a wise great primate.
So Joe, what was your like fact or fiction that you tried to slip in earlier?
Like right at the beginning?
Yeah.
I kind of planted that seed early. I really did.
Let me just say it didn't turn into anything, so you have to plant it again.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to panspermia it early.
You panspermiated my brain.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Oh, hold on. I just want to tell you the beer I just cracked first.
What do you got, dude?
There's definitely panspermia porn or whatever you said.
I think it's time to move on to the segments.
I got a New England style from Wilmington Brewing Company out on the Outer Banks, which are getting hammered with a bad storm right now. But
Outer Banks is great, though.
The storm's coming, yeah. The seas are rising around here. The storm's coming.
So it's a New England style, 8% brewed with lactose, and there's literally, it says on the side, no boil hops. So there's no bitterness to this beer. It's just dry hopping. It's
nice,
like a glass of juice.
Oh, interesting.
Hoppy juice.
By the way, that means like you can put hops in while the thing's boiling or while it's already cooled down. That's called dry hopping, right, Johnny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you add them during the boil, you get bitterness, which is what a lot of non-beer drinkers. If you give them a beer,
think of as hops.
They're not used.
Yeah.
That bitterness is specific to beer. It's
big time.
But this style doesn't have them, so try it if you don't like bitter beers.
Yeah, we should really push the craft beer angle more on here. Like, just like everybody that, like, if you asked me, I guess about a year ago, I had just started to like become aware of the craft beer world, you know?
Yeah.
And then like 6 months went by, and I had gone to my first like beer release, you know, which those can be annoying. Like the fact that they exist is kind of annoying.
It's kind of like a culture shock if it's not something that you've been indoctrinated.
I mean, it's a fun event, so like events are
sure.
fun. Hey Johnny, we met somebody at this other half release. We got there when they opened, kind of late compared to other people. Guess what time this cat showed up to wait in line? It was a 10 a.m. opening.
Like midnight.
Midnight, exactly. And guess what number on line he was?
What?
50th.
That's Brooklyn for you.
Insanity.
But didn't you get the same beer he did?
So we got, they released 4 beers. One of them was like highly sought after. He got that one. We got the other 3 and not that one. And we woke up at a reasonable hour at like 8 a.m. So I'm perfectly happy.
Yeah, that's a reasonable trade-off.
It's crazy. Yeah, and it's not even that we should push the beer more. And it's not that I'm some craft beer expert, because I'm definitely not.
Yeah, you just
but
brew
it's something
beer.
I definitely enjoy learning about. So,
no, he's an expert. He's being modest, ladies and gentlemen.
But it's also
share,
like
and subscribe.
it's not something that people really have to push too hard on anyone, because like all you have to do is introduce someone to it. It's like anything good. If the thing's good enough, it gets picked up on, right? So Joe, you've probably introduced a few people to craft beer, and then now they've like sort of taken up their own energy towards it, right?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. It's like, I'm not going to try to convince you of the science behind beer.
This.
I'm just going to present you with the evidence of how delicious this beer is by handing you one.
And there is a learning curve, like anything else. Like sometimes at first it doesn't quite work, right?
Well, that's often the case where people say, "Oh, I hate IPAs," and I'm like, you should probably stop talking like that first of all.
Yeah, first off, lose the accent because you sound like a fucking idiot.
Right, and then try this really good IPA that's not that same vibe of that type of bitterness or dryness or whatever the problem is that you were having.
It's like, shut your mouth. No, shut your stupid mouth.
Shut your mouth until you open it to put beer in.
And then open it, drink this beer, and then just drink it. Don't talk.
And that's fair.
And then like 10 seconds later, they'll probably go, "Oh yeah, that was good."
It's funny.
It is easier
it's funny,
if
Johnny. Johnny, actually, we had a couple of our uncles over the other night. Long story short, and
Nice.
they were you can probably guess who they are, but they were saying how because me and Tommy were talking about the fancy beers or whatever, and they were saying like, oh yeah, no, we're not into the fancy craft beer scene. We like a good Guinness, whatever, and we're like, oh, that's cool. Just try this one. I forget what beer it was exactly, but it was a really good craft beer. And we were like, just try one. And we're like, oh, it's this. It's like we were explaining like what to expect, and they're like, yeah, okay, like it's gonna taste like beer or like just two whatever. Like they always think it's gonna taste
I've
two
had
whatever.
one beer, I've had them all.
Yeah, exactly. And they tried it, and they were both like, you could see they wanted to be like, they were kind of smacking their lips like, oh yeah, let's be ready to be like, oh, it's too bitter or it's too hoppy or whatever. And they both just look at us and they go, it's pretty good.
Pretty
good. They were pleasantly surprised, and we were like, yeah, no, not all craft beer is good. There's a lot of bad craft beer. Don't be fooled, but there's a lot of good craft beer, and it's way better than all the rest of the beer.
And it's like anything else.
Yeah,
Like
it's all
you just
spectrums,
said,
like the
there's
oceans.
good and there's bad, but you sort of just have to know how to navigate it.
Navigation is the key.
Yeah.
Just like the sea.
Just like the sea.
And I have to pee. No, I don't. But
I mean, we were talking earlier, like
it just
like,
rhymed.
Why, like, we're doing an episode on the ocean. It's like, what the fuck do we know about the ocean? It's like, the point I was trying to make is, I feel like all of us are pretty good. When you go on the internet, it's like this mysterious place filled with incredibly useful information that's correct.
Yeah, talk
and
about
incredibly
unlimited, though.
incorrect information. Literally incredible.
It's a jungle. It's great. Yeah.
It's a jungle, but you have to know how to navigate it.
I think more importantly is the fact that I couldn't believe that Mount Everest itself weighs 80 million times what all of Earth's oceans put together weighs.
Okay.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that, Johnny?
Say it one more time. Go ahead.
I can't because a mountain isn't a unit.
Yeah, well, let Joe be his little bullshit character here. He gets off on it. You probably jerk off
All right,
later
yeah.
thinking of like your fact or fiction character, like, oh, I get to be all like Alex Trebek and like I know and you don't know. Like,
That's such a
I get
fair
it. Yeah, I
assessment of
know.
Alex
I get to
Trebek.
withhold my knowledge.
yeah, I have knowledge that I can withhold. It's gonna get me hard.
And then go,
later.
ooh, you were so close.
Yeah.
But sorry, you're a fucking idiot.
Yeah, and then it's like the only reason you're not an idiot is because you just happened to like look it up first.
I just
That's
happen
it.
I just happen to have a team of people who looked it up first for me if I'm Alex Trebek.
Right.
That's the difference.
That's the difference.
That's the
yeah.
difference
At least
from-
you actually did it.
At least I actually got drunk and found out that Mount Everest weighs wait, I'm sorry. I think I fucked up the quote.
Yeah, I was gonna say, can you read it one more
Yeah,
time?
no, I just realized as I was about to say it, like, I'm pretty sure I said it the opposite way the first time. So all of Earth's oceans weigh 80 million times what Mount Everest weighs.
80 million.
Yeah, 80
Okay.
million. And that's given a margin of error.
So I
I'll
have
give
to
you a margin
navigate
of
us
error.
through the fact or fiction a little bit.
Yeah. Go for it.
It's there's a few things going on here. So Joe, let me just make sure I have the claim correct.
Yes, go
You're
ahead.
claiming that
I'm not claiming, I'm just stating
the
a
weight
fact.
of all of the oceans is 80 times that of all of the rock that comprises Mount Everest.
80 million times.
80 million times.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Correct.
So we mentioned
All right,
earlier
so-
water is really, really heavy.
Dense,
That's
too.
worth noting, right?
It's dense, too.
It's very dense.
Yeah.
Rock is not very dense. It is heavy, but it's not very dense.
Which is an interesting distinction, right?
Now, I happen to know that the ocean goes down 36,000 feet. You know,
I don't think you ever said the average ocean depth, though.
it's
I think
2.3 miles, 12,000 something feet.
that's the average? Okay.
Yeah. But the deepest part is it goes down about as high as a plane flies in the sky. Isn't that pretty crazy?
That's pretty deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Fuck.
like you're sitting there at the beach looking at the water and you see the surface of the water, but then you look up and you see a plane flying overhead.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, look, that plane's like that big fucking giant metal tube flying through the air, except it looks like a tiny dot because it's 30,000 feet that way.
That'd be deep if it was water below me.
Yeah, it's terrifyingly deep.
Yeah.
So the ocean's very deep and very large, and I
Yeah.
would say I don't know exactly how much it weighs, but I would imagine it's disturbingly high. So my first instinct is to say any fact that puts the weight of the water against anything else is probably true. That's my first instinct.
Yeah.
My second instinct is a classic way the fact or fiction can go wrong is you say something that feels right, but then you give like an order of magnitude too much.
Yeah, Luke's on the money.
It might be like 80,000 times more heavy, but it's not 80 million.
Well, so can I give a point of context that I was thinking about this earlier, and I don't know if or how it will help, but I think it may... maybe Johnny can make something of this, because I know Johnny might understand it, certainly. Johnny, do you remember going to like a baseball game, like maybe a Yankees game when we were kids?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you remember looking at the stadium and seeing all the people in a full packed stadium?
Yeah.
Like how many fucking people that is? So that's about 50,000 people. So 80 million would be, I think I calculated, about 160 of those stadiums of Mount Everest. That's how much weight I'm saying the oceans is.
Yeah, but so like my instinct is like that could be true because I know water is heavier than we can think.
But I'm saying, as per your point of the orders of magnitude and not being able to conceptualize it, because humans have an issue after some order of magnitude. It's like, I don't know the difference really between a billion and a trillion. It's a shit ton.
Tell me to picture 10 cars, I can look at it in my mind.
Right, but that exactly. So
10,000? I don't know.
So that's what I'm saying. Imagine 160 Yankee stadiums, and all the people in each one is a Mount Everest. That's what I'm saying. How much the oceans weigh?
Yeah, that's crazy. Because also, I don't know how much a fucking mountain is. Like, you only see the top of it. So I don't know how far deep you're going.
All right, I'll give you some more data.
Yeah, that's a great question.
No,
are you going based off of sea level?
I'll give you more data.
There's no foundation line.
I'm giving you
There's
data.
no curb to line up the mountain with.
Here's the statistic. Going with our height of 11,500 feet from
Base camp to the summit.
So sea level or base camp?
From base camp, not from sea level.
Okay.
Base camp?
Yes, from base camp at Mount Everest.
That's pretty high up. You're still in Nepal somewhere.
Well, no, it's only from base camp to summit is only 11,500 feet. So good thing you asked. That makes a difference.
Still 2 miles.
It is still very far.
I'm going to go with my original instinct, which was you're on the right track, but your number was a bit too high.
Yeah. That sounds right. Luke's getting good at this.
Okay.
There's got to be a learning curve. Johnny, you were nervous about that on a recent episode. Like we were starting to turn the genie question right back at you, you know, and I could tell we had you, you know. You're like, oh shit, these guys are starting to learn. Like
they're evolving from the oceans of genie loop.
So am I right?
So here's one thing I'll tell you that's interesting is that, and this I thought was really kind of intriguing, that the oceans actually account for only 0.02% of the total weight of the Earth, which is actually more than I kind of thought.
Like 2%?
No.
Or 0.02%.
Like 2% would be 2.0%.
That's what I mean. Like 0.02%, but 0.02 by itself is just 2%.
Oh, is it?
Like, I mean, 0.02 would just be like 2/100ths.
Oh shit! It's that much?
2%.
That's way more than I thought.
But I mean, water's heavy.
2%,
I mean, the thing about rock is that, like, at the bottom of the ocean, it's still like a long fucking way to get to the center of the Earth.
It's most of the way to get to the center of the Earth. Yeah. Right.
In fact, I remember seeing a Neil deGrasse Tyson lecture where he was talking about if you made the Earth the size of a pool ball, like let's say like you pick up a pool ball and you're holding it in your hands.
Oh yeah, that's in his book too. He talks about that.
It's in his book, but it's also in like a few of his lectures, I think. So if you take a high point like Mount Everest, that's kind of known as the highest point above sea level.
Right.
Although there are certain higher things depending on how you measure it, I think, you know, because certain mountains go like well below sea level.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so you take a high point like that, and then you take the really low points of the ocean, which on average is 12,000 feet down, but at its steepest is 36,000 feet down.
Right.
So you take all of that. That's a big gap, right?
Yeah.
So if you were to feel with your finger across the surface of a sphere.
Well, if you were a giant.
Well, that's the thing. If you were to feel with a fine-tooth comb, you would be like, hey, there's a trench that goes down here, and there's a mountain that goes up here.
I think the analogy is the fact that
you're a giant.
If you're a giant and the Earth is the size of a pool ball compared to how
that's
big
what I mean.
you are as a giant.
So now you're holding a pool ball, and that's Earth.
Right, correct. You're
Earth
that
would
giant
feel
size.
smoother than that pool ball, that perfectly smooth pool ball, right? Earth would feel just as smooth, even though it has dips down of 36,000 feet.
That's actually fake, by the way.
And dips
that's
up
stat.
of how high is Mount Everest?
It's high.
It's high. So that difference, right?
Yeah.
Compared to the size of the Earth, the ratio of that difference compared to the size of the Earth is so wide that you don't even notice it when you're feeling it as a giant.
Right.
That's the point, right?
Right.
So my guess is that, the Mount Everest is so minuscule that the weight of that rock,
He's getting flummoxed.
I'm getting flummoxed.
So what's your final vote?
My final vote is false.
False.
For the reasons. I give reasons because I want to be like, aha, I was kind of right anyways.
Yeah. Johnny, true or false?
I mean, 80 million is just a number I can't comprehend. So,
but that's why I told you it's
inclined to agree with
160
Luke.
Yankee stadiums, and each person in each
I just don't think that clue is helpful.
It's
just
Everest.
More numbers and things I can't picture.
Yeah, that's interesting, but it just makes me think of really dense people, like a bunch of singularities at the ballpark. It's just it doesn't really help. In
are you
this
true
decision,
or false?
But I'm gonna go with true because 80 million is a lot. So
yeah.
I'm curious. But.
So in fact, my math is probably totally wrong, by the way. But
as long as you get the fact right, we can recover from the math.
Oh no, the fact might be wrong because of the math.
Oh gosh.
But if it is right,
excellent.
Johnny digs it. In fact, the Earth's oceans are 84 million times the weight of Mount Everest.
And you said 80?
Yeah. But I said a 5 million margin of error at the beginning.
Yeah, so I was right.
Yeah, you were right.
Johnny's like, yeah, I got it.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. I never know when Joe's trying to trick me or not. I knew it was a lot.
I decided before he.
But that's why I was trying to contextualize it with some sort of tangible example where 80 million doesn't just sound like a random number of magnitude. So it's like I've been in Yankee Stadium. I've seen 50,000 people. So imagine each one of them is what I imagine Mount Everest is like, and then timing that by 100 plus 60 more of those.
And what do you get? Joe?
I get what I would imagine the size of the Earth's oceans are.
Bullshit.
That's insane.
You get that if you started the whole equation with knowing the answer.
Yeah, what's your
point? But if you're
point?
just trying to do the equation from the bottom up, you just get stuck at how do I picture that many Yankee stadiums of fat people?
But
if I had people
because I'm like, how fat are
you?
But that points
10
to
million
the fact
pounds
of
each.
how big the oceans are. Like Mount Everest is fucking big, dude. 80 million is a lot of Mount Everest. The oceans are big, but it's not bigger than 80 million Mount Everests.
Fair enough. It's hard to pluralize that word, too, I noticed.
Very, especially because I'm on whatever number drink here.
Joe, give us your sum up. What is the oceans?
What is the
wrap
oceans?
us up. Give us the conclusion paragraph, writing professor.
The oceans are the beginning. They may, in fact, be the end. But all we know for now is that they are our friend.
What's that from?
It just rhymed.
You just said it now?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Applause.
All right, Johnny, what do you...
Johnny, can you give us your
Oh, that's hard to follow.
I mean, he just rhymed a bunch of bullshit words. You can do it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Try it.
The ocean...
No, you don't have to
No, let me go.
Oh, okay, good.
No, go ahead.
No, I got nothing. I was out.
No, go ahead. Go.
I had a would you rather, but we basically talked about it. It was about exploring the ocean depths, and I think that's where we'd all be at, so that's no good. But I got another one. Would you rather have super strength, but you got to be holding an onion? Wait, no, we should save this to the drunk tank.
Yeah. Are we drunk tanking?
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
Do you guys want a drunk tank?
I guess we could.
We could do that. Yeah, we still have some more beers. Well, thank you for sharing, and subscribing on our Oceans episode.
Get in touch. let us know if you like things like oceans.
Yeah, it's time to transition. It's official. Johnny's standing up for some reason.
I just wanted to point out one last thing about the oceans.
Yeah.
There's something known as the falling whale, and
Oh, they got me good. I was literally dancing, and I got fucking hung up on. Well played. Luke was talking about the falling whale, which is a real thing, I'm pretty sure. The ecosystems that develop for years after a whale dies and falls to the bottom of the ocean because they're just so big, all the life they can support. It's like a pretty amazing thing. But we're done. Come check us out in the drunk tank. We still got some more really good craft beer, and there's just so much in the fridge. I got to clear it out, so we got to, every now and then, drink a bunch and ramble about stuff. And I got a would you rather involving onions. So come on in the...
we got him, right?
Did I do it?
I think he was dancing.
He was dancing. We got him.
I actually had something to say about the whale, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. I panicked. I
can say to you, we're still on the air.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So
first
when
of
a
all,
whale...
Johnny, defeat accepted, but go ahead.
That's 2 in a row for us.
If you don't know, this is the first time you're listening, we always battle over, because Johnny Skypes in, so we battle over who hangs up first to end the episode, and then we'll enter Drunk Tank accordingly. But we get to wrap up
again.
So Johnny, you'll hear him right after we hang up, right? And now you're hearing us at the very end. You will have
This is future perfect tense again. I
yes,
love this.
Correct.
Tense. You will have just heard Johnny being like, "Oh, I'm such a idiot. Like I'm a big fat stupid idiot, and I lost again, and my face is really stupid looking, and like." I always talk like this, you know.
I have butthole
so you'll hear
like
that
the
from
president.
him, and now you're hearing us.
Yeah.
And if you stuck around this long, well done.
Yeah. Bless your fish soul.
Bless your
flesh.
Bless your flesh.
Oh my God! It's time to end.
We got to get to the drunk tank fast, Joe.
We got to survive.
I just wanted to talk about whales. When a whale dies, it's called like a falling whale or something like that. And the whole carcass just falls to the bottom of the ocean, and it becomes this massive feast for like years that all other life eats and lives in the carcass of the whale.
It's like a new ecosystem, yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of this idea of like, you know, we come from nature, and then eventually entropy will always increase, and we will return to nature.
Yeah.
Your body will, let's say, rest on the earth eventually, and then become part of the earth, and new life will emerge from that.
Until it all dies.
And I think the deep sea is kind of like a great model for this type of thinking, because those processes happen so much faster and so much more directly. It's like as soon as you're in liquid, you can decompose very quickly into and just become part of matter again.
Right.
You know?
But that's what's interesting about it, is because it's also where it started. Like it's also the origin of everything.
And there is that aspect to it.
Yeah, and you know,
and I don't know what to do with that necessarily.
No, either. I think we transitioned into it. Fuck.
I think we'll go into drunk tank.
I think we evolve into drunk tank.
So if you're still listening, thank you very much for listening to this podcast.
If you would like to hear us continue into drunk tank, please join us on Patreon.
Yeah, so we do this thing called Drunk Tank. We're about to go into it, where we're going to call Johnny back and just keep drinking beer and get, I guess, drunker is the easiest way to say that. Like right now we're a little bit drunk, but we usually have like 2 or 3 more beers and get more ridiculous.
There's already one in the ice bucket.
Yeah. So that's what we're about to do. But definitely thanks for listening if you're hearing this.
We had a great time.
This isn't really an excuse for us to have a fun time, but just share it with people you think might like it. We would love to continue podcasting.
Especially people who know more about the oceans. Send it to them.
Yeah, and anyone out there listening who thinks you might have a fun time being on a podcast, just, I guess, come on, right?
Yeah, donate $100 and we'll let you on. I just decided that.
Or for free, if you're cool. If you're not cool, you have to pay to come on. If you're cool, we'll have you on for free. Deal?
I'm going to charge them on side money, but yeah.
Well,
you go ahead and promise whatever you want for free.
Fair enough. All right. Are we good?
See you in Drunk Tank. Or next episode.
Or next episode.
We hope to see you either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Swim well, my friends.
Bye-bye.
Swim well, my friends. Dos Equis.